Chapter 1476 to 1500. Supremacy Games. 1476 The Walk of Shame. Felix's thought process was cut off shortly after picking up many vibrational waves from above. Looks like reinforcement has arrived. Felix glanced at the dark gemstone for a moment and left it in its place, not daring to steal evidence. Since he was on the case, he had access to them anyway, so there was no need to take one. Soon, the captains and their squads entered the dungeon and began surveying the hall with solemn looks. Felix and Ravager dropped whatever they were doing and went forward. They saluted the captains respectfully and Felix allowed Ravager to update them. "We have freed all the spirits from the dungeon, the only thing remaining are those machines and the peculiar gemstones in them." "Great work." Captain Frederick gave them a pleased look and ordered. "We will take it from here, you should rejoin with your captain in the station." "Understood." Felix and Ravager didn't argue back and took off, not bothering to even glance at Salapel and Nebula's direction. "This is too dangerous for us, catching a respectable warden with such heinous crimes will make this case turn into the trial of the century." Salapel narrowed her eyes coldly. "We have to get a piece of the credit somehow from here if we want to win the qualify. Shut the F***ck up, this isn't the time for this." Nebula gave her a deathly glare. "You just heard there is a large organization responsible for turning spirits into slaves across the entire realm and this is all you care about. Are you joining the law enforcement department for merely the sake of status?" Nebula asked with a disgusted tone. Nebula was considered Carbuncle's student and while she was arrogant and a bit bitchy, it didn't mean that she wasn't kind. The whole reason she had gotten so strong and worked so hard to join the law enforcement department was to protect the weak and uphold order. Everything about this case made her skin crawl and she wanted nothing more than to punish the culprits regardless if she would get credits or not. "You know we can do both." Salapel pushed her glasses upward as she left one last remark. "You can care and win at the same time. If you don't think the same, you will be our downfall in this competition." Before Nebula could reply, Captain Rashford ordered them, "Recover the machines and make sure not to damage them." "Understood." 10 minutes ago. The clock tower struck midnight, echoing its chimes throughout the streets of the capital. Most would expect the law enforcement department to be quiet at this hour, but tonight was different. Whispers filled the streets and curious eyes peeked from the shadows, trying to catch a glimpse of the unimaginable scene unfolding. Captain Charleston walked at the front, his tall figure casting a shadow that stretched across the cobblestone pathway. Behind him, a procession of handcuffed figures moved in a somber line, but it wasn't the sheer number of prisoners that was shocking, it was the identity of the lead detainee. Sharky, once a prominent figure in the city, a respectable warden with a mansion that overlooked the capital, now had his hands bound in front of him. His once proud posture was now slouched, his head lowered, avoiding the piercing gazes of those he once considered his citizens. His fine nightrobe, which once shone with elegance, was now tarnished with dirt and grime. "Charleston! You mother****! You will pay for this!" Sharky's lips quivered in anger at the humiliation and shame he was put in. He knew that Captain Charleston could have kept them on the truck until they entered the department from the garage. Instead, he let them out near the department's main gate and made them walk behind him in this manner under the public watchful eyes. "Is that what I think it is? It can't be Lord Sharky, right? He is one of the few pure souls in the government. He can't be arrested. It is him, it's really him." The citizens' eyes were left utterly stunned as they watched their beloved politician enter the police station akin to a gang boss caught with his subordinates. Chaos and ruckus began to arise as the news traveled fast and far, causing many concerned and angry citizens to gather near the station's gate. Even the law enforcers in front of the gate were shocked by the situation, but they cleared the way for Captain Charleston and kept the citizens away from him. As they reached the courtyard towards the cells, gasps of disbelief echoed from every corner. Officers halted in their tracks, their faces a canvas of shock and betrayal. Some of the newer recruits whispered amongst themselves, pointing discreetly while others simply stared, unable to comprehend the reality in front of them. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to discussions. Soon, the news was spreading like wildfire inside the law department. Suddenly, Inspector Novler appeared in front of Captain Charlson and his convoy, blocking his path. "What's the meaning of this, Charlson?" he asked with a worried and surprised tone, but his heart was filled with inexplicable venom and hatred. If it was possible, he would have ripped his throat apart. Who could blame him? He was under the impression that Captain Charlson's squad was working on the case he assigned them. It wasn't like he was stupid to not place eyes on them, but he couldn't even if he wanted to. Law enforcers were given information on their devices about the identities of any registered spirit near them, which meant if someone chased them for prolonged periods, he would appear on their device multiple times. Still, he was receiving reports about the case's development through normal channels, and based on the clearance rate, he knew that Captain Charlson and his squad were on it. Unbeknownst to him, Felix and Miss Sani were on the case, and they were just as smart if not smarter than Captain Charlson. Just them alone was enough to take down Sharky and expose his operations, don't even mention having Ravager and Nidam added to the mix. "I have arrested a criminal," Captain Charlson replied calmly. "A criminal?" Inspector Nolver eyed Sharky and said, "I hope you have evidence to convict him. He is a governmental official and you know what happens when we abuse our authority." "Abuse?" Captain Charlson shook his head. "That's something he was doing, not me." Before Inspector Nolver could reply, Captain Charlson stepped forward and expanded multiple holographic screens from his device. He cleared his throat, silencing the crowd. The weight of the moment was palpable, the gravity undeniable. "I stand before you all to expose crimes that have tainted the very foundations of our great realm," began Captain Charlson, his voice echoing with authority. "Crimes orchestrated by one of our own." He pointed at a hologram, revealing photographs of the dungeon under Sharky's mansion, with rows of spirits chained, their bodies bearing signs of prolonged torture. Another showed machines and gadgets used to extract negative energy from spirits. Another hologram showed Sharky's people loading chained-up spirits into trucks, and another hologram displayed Sharky's meeting with Mr. Atticus, discussing the selling of a new batch of fallen spirits. "The esteemed Warden Sharky," Captain Charlson continued, "is behind a wicked operation that has trafficked, tortured, and exploited spirits for the sole purpose of creating mindless slaves called fallen specters. These acts are not just offenses against the spirits but crimes against the very essence of our realm." Whispers broke out amongst the officers. Some looked horrified, while others seemed on the brink of anger. Before Captain Charlson could continue exposing him, Inspector Nolver stepped forward, his face even grimmer than before. "The magnitude of these revelations cannot be overstated. We are duty-bound to bring justice to those harmed and ensure that such malevolence never finds root in our realm again. Take those filthy animals to the cells to await for their trials." He made a 180-degree switch and only Captain Charlson knew about it. The rest of the officers were seen giving murderous looks at Sharky. As Sharky walked past Inspector Nolver, he couldn't help but beseech him telepathically. "Save me. They have enough to get me kicked from the heavenly plane. Hang in there, I will try to postpone the trial as much as possible." Inspector Nolver uttered coldly, "Don't make any foolish decisions on your own, trust in the Duke and he will take care of this somehow." 1477 Making Sharky their scapegoat. "Tell him to take the fall," Duke Humphrey said calmly. When Inspector Nolver visited the Duke and reported the whole scenario to him, this was the first thing that came out of his mouth. He didn't seem enraged, disappointed, or even bothered that his fallen organization was exposed in the open. One could wonder if he was just too controlling of his emotions or if he really wasn't that bothered. "I don't think he will agree to that," Orellana uttered with a deep frown. She and the rest of the four heads joined the meeting through holographic videos the instant they heard the news. Unlike the Duke, all of them felt their hearts chilled at the thought of being caught with Sharky, knowing that expulsion was guaranteed and not even the Duke could save them. That bastard will definitely take us down with him if we do nothing to help. Marcel cursed. I already told him to keep his mouth shut until the trials. Inspector Nolver knitted his eyebrows. Charleston will definitely hammer him hard to give up all information he has to bring down the entire organization. He will even tempt him with a deal to save himself from getting kicked out. All of them showed solemn expressions. They understood that Captain Charleston was smart enough to target all governmental officials in the organization to purify the realm once and for all instead of just celebrating Sharky's arrest. Even if he spent his entire life in prison, Sharky would most definitely make this choice if it meant not becoming a wandering spirit again. As for the rest of the organization, none of them would be offered such a deal even if they came forward after Sharky betrayed them. This scenario couldn't help but put some bad thoughts in their minds, thoughts such as, why not step forward and come clean for the sake of their survival instead of leaving their fate at the hands of Sharky. Just as those thoughts were starting to fester in the minds, Duke Humphrey uttered, "Tell him to confess that he is the mastermind and that no one else is a part of the organization. In addition, he shall confess to multiple hidden places where we store our negativity fuelers and fallen spirits." But Duke Humphrey gave Inspector Nolver an emotionless look and continued on, "We will put Grievous as the prosecutor and Marcel as the judge in his case. With such a confession, you will have a reason to put him in jail without being overly suspicious. It's a good idea and I think this is the only way for us to get out of this without too many losses." Grievous agreed. The others nodded their heads in agreement. Sharky was bound to make a deal to save his own skin from getting kicked out. If so, they might as well make the deal beneficial to them. Since they were powerful and authoritative officials, it was extremely easy to manipulate the narrative to their side. All we have to do is persuade Sharky. Inspector Nolver narrowed his eyes. Even though the plan sounds good and beneficial to him, I still have doubts he will agree to take the fall by himself. No one was that selfless to put the entire blame on his shoulders to cover for his peers in the organization, especially when there was no blood relation between them. Tell him the plan will commence ahead of schedule. Duke Humphrey shared, causing his subordinates' eyes to widen in shock. But, aren't we still far from the target? We have no choice. Grievous shook his head, either we go for it now or the Ethereal Council will find a method to return the fallen back to normal. It wasn't like they didn't comprehend what he said, but it still didn't make this scenario any more accepting. Based on their expansion, the second part of the plan should have taken place in another decade if not more to ensure a 100% success chance. But now? It was too uncertain if it was going to work out or not. Inspector Nolver and the rest didn't dare imagine what would Lord Hades do to them when they failed and got caught. This is all because of that little sh*t, the moment he appeared, everything had been falling apart. Inspector Nolver cursed as he envisioned Felix's face. Ever since Felix's first day in the heavenly plane, he got entangled with the fallen organization after purchasing Kura and shielding her from them. While they had no idea how much he was involved in their exposure, the fact that he was part of it in his first year in the heavenly plane made it even harder to stomach. "Do as I have told you and remain focused," Duke Humphrey said calmly, "nothing else will matter if we succeed in our plan." The four heads nodded in understanding and left the meeting to begin their preparation to tackle the trial. Meanwhile, Duke Humphrey went back to the window in front of his desk and started gazing at the fake stars. His expression was as composed as ever. However, his hand kept shaking as he reached out inside his robe and tightened his grasp on a small pendant. It was a symphony of celestial craftsmanship, a true marvel of cosmic design. It was gleaming with a light that seemed to have been woven from the strands of 1,000 stars. The core of the pendant held an intricate celestial orb, a small, condensed replica of a galaxy, slowly rotating with multicolored, luminous nebulae and tiny sparkling stars encapsulated within. Yet, the most unique thing about it was still the trillion microscopic divine inscriptions written across its entire structure. As Duke Humphrey caught the pendant, his heart beat fast, not out of agitation or fear, but out of absolute reverence and worship. Then, he closed his eyes and murmured in his mind with a peculiar-sounding language, if Felix heard it, he would have recognized it immediately to be the Universal Codex. O Sovereign, whose voice weaves the celestial symphony, bestow upon me your ethereal whisper and illuminate my being with your boundless wisdom. The moment he finished the incarnation, the pendant sprang to life, awakening from its ageless slumber. A sudden and profound silence befell the room, time itself seemed to bow in reverence to the celestial entity. The tranquil stillness was shattered as a myriad of stars and celestial bodies unfolded around him, expanding and enveloping him within the very essence of the encapsulated galaxy. It was an ethereal dance of celestial brilliance, a myriad of constellations and nebulas painting the ancient and sacred walls of his office with their stellar radiance. A luminous crescendo of cosmic light cascaded around him, and, within this symphony of celestial light, two blinding white eyes materialized, emerging from the boundless expanse of the universe. The eyes, vast and infinite, bore into Duke Humphrey's very soul, a celestial gaze transcending the bounds of mortal comprehension. With a voice echoing the harmonious resonances of the cosmos, the being spoke, "What's the purpose of the call? Haven't I told you to contact me only during an emergency? The pendant cannot keep the ever-roaming eyes of Hades away if you keep exhausting its energy. I understand, Godfather, but, we are in an emergency." Duke Humphrey took a deep breath and confessed, his heart about to leap out of his chest in fear. The plan has been compromised and I don't think we will have enough fallen spirits to cause the universe to punish Lord Hades. 1478 The lands of the gods, hey? How many fallen spirits are you short of? The Godfather asked, not bothering to waste time on what caused the plan to fail or berate the Duke for allowing it to happen. The celestial pendant consumed too much energy each second it remained active and there was no way to replenish its energy in the spirit realm. We still need more than 500,000 spirits to have an above 50% success chance. Duke Humphrey answered with a deep sigh. He might have shown his subordinates a assured front, but he was also under the impression that their plan was bound to falter if they went for it now. An entire 500,000? What were you doing all of those years? The Godfather asked with an overbearing tone that almost broke the Duke's back from its pure pressure. Godfather, please. I have been careful not to attract Lord Hades' attention. The pendant can only hide what happens around me, but not for the others. Duke Humphrey beseeched. I don't need excuses, I need results. Godfather eyed him coldly. What will I tell the superior celestials if the plan fails? I promise you, I will make it work one way or another. In fact, I already have an idea, but it's too risky and it will cause me to lose the celestial pendant. Duke Humphrey said. I don't want to know, just make it happen. The Godfather warned one last time, the next time we speak, it better be face to face. After finishing his piece, the celestial pendant retrieved the galaxy back inside its core, expelling Duke Humphrey into his office. He looked down at the pendant that seemed somewhat dimmer than usual and couldn't help but tighten his grasp on it. I only have one chance to fulfill my duty and return to my rightful place. Duke Humphrey thought with a look of absolute resolve. If it means using that method, so be it. Meanwhile, in a cold metallic interrogation room within the station, Sharky was seen sitting solemnly with light handcuffs around his wrists. No one was with him, causing the silence inside the room to make him immerse himself in the events leading to his arrest. He didn't need to wonder if his reputation was holding up or not, as the evidence found in his mansion was enough to make all citizens across the entire heavenly plane denounce him for good. He was right in his assumption as a shockwave of disbelief, and murmurs of incredulity rippled through the radiant expanses of the heavenly plane after watching the breaking news related to his case. The common folk, their faces a mask of astonishment and betrayal, gathered around ethereal screens projecting the breaking news of Sharky's downfall. Not all evidence was shown, but just pieces of it were enough to turn everyone against him, even the spirits he helped personally. It didn't look at all for him and he knew it. I might have lost my reputation and life, but I will not get kicked out to the coldness of the ether. Sharky promised himself with an icy look. He did as Inspector Nolver told him to do, keep his mouth shut and wait for his lawyer to do the talking. Obviously, the lawyer was also part of the organization and would be the direct link of communication between them. Right now, he was waiting for his arrival. Sometime later, a shadow slipped into his isolated cell, a seemingly nondescript figure. He resembled the Watcher's race as he had grey skin and 4 limbs clad in a formal suit. About damn time, Evander. Sharky gave him an irritated look. What's with the delay? My apologies, but I was working out with the heads to craft the best method to secure your safety, Evander replied with a forced smile. Speak, what did Duke say? Sharky, I won't sugarcoat it, he confessed. The organization demands your silence, your submission to the role of the condemned. Sharky's eyes, gleaming embers of resentment and defiance, met the lawyer's surreptitious gaze. And why should I bow my head to such ignominy? The lawyer's lips curled into a secret, knowing smile, because, the Duke, plans to accelerate our plan, the second phase dawns prematurely. We need you to take the fall to buy us some time. Our triumph heavily depends on you and the Duke understands this very well. That's why we planned on putting our people on your trial to make sure that you will get just jail time. Trust us, we won't get you kicked out of the plane, and when the plans succeed, you know the rewards awaiting us. Evander uttered with a look of reverence and expectation. It seemed like the Duke wasn't too secretive about his end goal and made sure to share it with the ones he trusted the most. Well, it was expected, as there was no way he could have bought the assistance of such capable governmental officials without an enticing reward much better than remaining in the government. Sharky remained silent, deep in his thought process. As a shrewd politician, he had already expected this much to happen. He was smart enough to understand that he would never get away from this regardless of the Duke's authority. There were some things that no one could influence or pressure regardless of the imposed authority. I will be turned into a scapegoat and all of the committed crimes by the organization will fall under my name. Sharky sighed. This path was simply terrifying for someone who treated his reputation as his most sacred treasure. Still, he knew that he had not many options. He could accept the deal, take the hit, and have a chance of being taken to the promised lands after the triumph of the plan. Or snitch on the entire organization and make all of their efforts collapse just to secure eternal jail time. Both options were shit, but beggars can't be choosers. The land of the gods, hey. Sharky smiled bitterly with his eyes closed shut. I guess you made up your choice. Evander said. Sharky, the whispers of promised lands and celestial destinies coursed through his veins, rekindling the flame of purpose within him. He nodded, the resolve solidifying within him. Very well, I shall be the sacrificed pawn. But remember, the promised deliverance shall await me beyond these chains, the sanctuary of the prophesied lands shall be my sanctuary. Don't worry, old friend, it shall be our sanctuary. Evander smiled widely before opening his suitcase. Let's prepare you for the trial of the century. Sharky focused on the documents before him and both of them began working on their defense case. While this was ongoing, Felix had retreated to a well-lighted hospital room. He was positioned beside a bed where Carbuncle's wife, her fur a tangled mass, lay motionless, the light from her forehead gemmed dim and pulsating weakly. He refused to leave her company, waiting for her to wake up from a coma. The torture was too much for many spirits, forcing them to enter a peaceful slumber, and no matter what anyone did, none of them woke up. Felix had to keep her company since Carbuncle could not meet up with her at the moment. As much as he missed her and wanted her badly in his life, Carbuncle wanted Felix to give her a choice when she woke up. A choice of whether she wanted to get her memories back and live with him an eternal life here as a husband and wife, or continue being a servant. In both cases, Carbuncle planned on keeping her around him for her safety, but it was best for Felix to handle these things without his involvement due to his sensitive governmental position. What if she rejects having her memories restored? Felix thought to himself as he stared at her face. This will ruin him. When he thought this far, Felix couldn't help but feel a slight tingle in his heart, like a bad prominent feeling related to this exact scenario. What if I reunited with Isna again and she rejected me? Felix touched his chest, feeling his cold heart beating rhythmically. This thought frightened him a little, but not because he was scared of it happening, but of him not feeling anything if it happened. That scared him more than anything. 1479 The trial of the century. Felix hadn't forgotten about Isna and he had no plans of leaving the spirit realm without her. However, he feared that she wouldn't want to accompany him anymore for the sake of his safety, which was something he absolutely abhorred. At the moment, he could do nothing about it as even setting a meeting with Isna was impossible. Lord Hades would know for a fact that he had his memories restored if he dared even utter her name out loud, so, he could only wish for the best and see how the situation develops. Suddenly, Felix received a call from his captain, requesting his immediate attendance. Unable to refuse his orders, Felix left the hospital room. When he arrived at their office, he noticed that Miss Sani and Mr. Atticus were also there. We have just received a court date and the assigned juridical officials in the trial. Captain Charleston informed with a faint smile. Luckily, Grievous has been picked as the prosecutor and he is known for his merciless treatment of such criminals. What if he is also part of the organization? Miss Sani shook her head. At this point, I don't doubt the organization has infiltrated the juridical system and planted moles in it. I also think the same, but this is Sir Grievous we are talking about. Hazel uttered with a tone of utter reverence, someone as upright as him can't be part of that organization. Haven't you already learned your lesson? Ravager said coldly, even the respectable Sharky turned out to be the nastiest monster in the realm. I don't trust anyone anymore in the government and it's best if we focus our effort on forcing Sharky to confess his peers' identities plus the method to void the fallen transformation. Ravager was more interested in the second goal as he wished for nothing but to have his little sister return to normal again. He didn't want to give her new memories and a new personality through the reformation system as it meant losing his sister once and for all. Plus, he had seen how Aryan became after he was given new memories. He still behaved like a robot and listened to orders perfectly, the only difference was that he had a new set of skills, nothing more, nothing less. Making Sharky confess will be difficult, I believe he will keep stalling and stalling for the sake of his VRRR. Captain Charleston was cut off by his device, causing him to peek at its screen. When he saw the details of the message he received, his pupils were enlarged to the limit. Before the others could ask him what it was, they all received the same message from Sharky's lawyer. Sharky has decided to confess everything for some leniency during the trial. Well, that was a bit too quick. Mr. Atticus chuckled, I guess my purpose here is done, I am out. Without awaiting their response, he walked away, not bothering himself anymore with the case. His entire existence was to testify against Sharky in the trial, but if he was willing to plead guilty, then he didn't need to be summoned as a witness anymore. Understanding this, they let him go. But, they didn't understand Sharky's reasoning for wanting to confess so quickly. I smell something fishy about this. Nidam said with a solemn tone. We all do. Captain Charleston ordered, let's go see if he is for real or plotting something. Unfortunately for them, Sharky didn't entertain their request to meet them without his lawyer. His lawyer refrained from giving them any details about what he would confess and his decision to do it. Unlike the cases in the living world, the law enforcer's job was considered done the moment the trial date was set. So, they couldn't really force themselves to do anything to Sharky. Now, it was a battle between the lawyer and the prosecutor, one would try his best to get a good sentence while the other would do the opposite. Unbeknownst to everyone, both sides were seeking the same result. Days went by and before long, the day of the trial had arrived. It was set 7 days after the imprisonment, which was considered quite early. The courtroom was a sea of unbroken silence, every present spirit was hanging on the precipice of anticipation, the air thick with the weight of unsaid words. Sharky was seen surrounded by light chains as he stood in front of a 3-judge panel. Marcel was the leading judge and his eyes seemed as cold as anyone else in the courtroom. Anyone who saw him would have a feeling that he would not show an ounce of mercy to Sharky. Felix, Ravager, and the rest of the squad were sitting at the back of the courtroom. Even Elder Kraken and many other governmental officials decided to attend the trial. It was the biggest event to happen in the past century and no one wanted to miss it. Defendant, how do you plead of your charges? Judge Marcel asked calmly. Sharky took a deep breath and uttered with his eyes closed shut. Guilty. The moment the word left his lips, the entire courtroom collapsed into a massive chaos with spirits cursing and insulting, and some seemed like they were about to rush him down. You monster! How could you do this to your fellow spirits? Kick him out! Order! Order in the court! Judge Marcel banged the gavel twice as he yelled, causing everyone to break from their emotional response and return to their seats. After the ruckus was controlled a bit, Sharky's lawyer stood up and requested, Honorable ones, my client has decided to trade crucial information for the sake of a lenient punishment. No mercy. Kick him out. We don't need his information. Many spirits didn't like the sound of it very much, but the majority understood that if Sharky opened his mouth, it would help a lot with the dismantling of the syndicate and such. It's up to the prosecutor. Judge Marcel passed the baton to his friend. Crevice stood up while fixing his suit. His charisma and reputation made everyone quiet down as a sign of respect. The prosecution team agrees to the deal based on the effectiveness of the information provided. Crevice shared. Not many spirits were surprised by his decision as it was the right one to make. Soon, everyone focused back on Sharky. Speak up! Judge Marcel ordered. The first words emerging from his mouth caused Felix and the others to have ugly expressions. I have founded the Fallen Spectres organization all alone, he admitted, his words like poison seeping into the very foundations of the courtroom. I discovered the secret, the method to bind spirits into servitude using the essence of negativity. Negativity? What's that? The assembly erupted into a cacophony of whispers and exclamations, the shockwave from his words rippling through the essence of every spirit present. Sharky continued, his voice gaining strength, I transformed this knowledge into a flourishing business, a clandestine market dealing in the shadows of the heavenly realm. He detailed the vile intricacies of his operations, painting a picture of a hidden empire thriving on pain and subjugation. I've sold these captivated spirits, these fallen, across the entire realm. Their agony, their submission, it was all just a product, a currency for to seethe my greed. This wasn't all. To make his claims more believable and trustworthy, he revealed many hidden locations, the secret chambers where spirits were chained, their essence slowly poisoned with darkness. When he was asked about the spirits tortured under his mansion, he confessed that they were called negativity fuelers, explaining that their negative energy born out of despair and pain was the main source of energy to create fallen specters. This confession didn't fly well in the courtroom as some spirits weren't able to maintain their anger and threw many objects at Sharky's body. While their anger and reaction was understandable, they were still kicked out of the courtroom. Uncaring and unbothered, Sharky continued confessing to one crime after another. The courtroom was turned into a battlefield, each disclosure a blow striking at the hearts of the warriors of light, the defenders of justice. The images Sharky painted were vivid, the shadows he revealed lurking in every corner, every unturned stone. He was the architect of this hidden empire, the mastermind behind the shadows corrupting the realm of light. After he concluded his confession, no one had the energy to speak or react anymore. The atrocities they heard were enough to give them nightmares for decades. Yet, Felix and his squad didn't seem pleased in the slightest. They turned him into a scapegoat. Felix uttered coldly, the noble heading the entire operation must be watching, hiding somewhere. If it wasn't for Kara, he would have believed that Sharky was the organization's founder like the majority of the spirits in the courtroom. Unbeknownst to him, Duke Humphrey was indeed watching the trial. He was much closer to him than expected as he was sitting next to Elder Kraken at the far back. What do you think, Brother Kraken? Duke Humphrey asked. I think we need to hold a council meeting. Elder Kraken replied with a solemn tone, based on his confession, there must be hundreds of thousands of fallen specters across the realm. We have to find them all and help them recover. My thoughts as well. Duke Humphrey nodded in agreement, but in reality, his heart was already set on using his last Hail Mary before the council could find the cure. 1480 A mere traveler, not a hero. Sharky was asked multiple questions and he answered them as truthfully as he could. A question about the fallen spectre's cure was also brought up and Sharky told them that he had no clue if it was even possible for the fallen spirits to recover. This news didn't sit well with Ravager. Restrain yourself. Felix held his arm after sensing that his partner seemed like he was about to jump Sharky. I am cool, I am cool. Ravager removed Felix's hand and tried his best to contain his emotions, knowing that it wouldn't end well for him if he dared assault Sharky here. Meanwhile, Sharky wasn't lying or trying to hide the truth on this topic, he genuinely was clueless if a cure existed since the entire operation was created by Duke Humphrey. This is all my client has to say. Evander concluded. We will double-check all the provided information and the punishment will be suggested according to its accuracy. Grievous nodded before sitting back again. Trial adjourned until tomorrow. Judge Marcel stated as he banged the gavel twice, then, he stood up with the other judges and exited the courtroom. That's it. Hazel remarked with a surprised tone. What did you expect? Nidam said, he pleaded guilty and confessed, this trial shouldn't have been even prolonged until tomorrow if it wasn't for the seriousness of the intel. Prolonging the trial until tomorrow isn't a good sign. Ravager said coldly, whether the information provided was useful or not, that monster doesn't deserve to spend another second in the heavenly plane. I disagree. Felix shook his head, I think being imprisoned for eternity here is far much cruel than kicking him out. True, getting kicked out is a scary punishment only because the alternative is much better, but in this case, Captain Charleston approved, I would rather have them imprison him forever until he loses his mind than erase his memories and kick him out. In a sense, getting kicked out was like an instant execution while jail time was a lifetime sentence. Since there was no death in the spirit realm, the second punishment was 100 times much worse in the long run. I don't trust the government anymore. Ravager uttered telepathically, who can ensure that he will really stay in jail forever and not get freed after the public forgets about his crimes. The true mastermind is still on the loose and with his authority, he can definitely get him out later on. No one argued with this fact. With Sharky's confession, it does seem like he has satisfied the higher UPS. Hazel said with a displeased tone, they will definitely try to conclude the case as quickly as possible to avoid the public's outrage. The public was indeed enraged after hearing about most of the case's details. They ought to feel angry as it made them realize that they were unsafe even if they followed the rules. So, the government would accept Sharky's villain story and end this case swiftly. If only it was possible to use the memories extraction process on him, we would get all we want. Ravager said with an irritated tone. The process was used on Arian before to find out if he had any memories. Unfortunately, they were allowed to use it on him because he had no identity and it was the only method to investigate more about him. In reality, this process was fairly dangerous as it might leave the target with some missing memories or even end up with a change of personality. So, even criminals had the right to block any attempt at extracting their memories. After all, what if the process was used on a spirit just to ruin him and yet find out that he wasn't the criminal? It was way too fatal. So, what now? Do we just let the case get closed in this manner and watch the rest of the organization's members run free? Hazel said with an unconvinced tone. Just the notion of Inspector Nulver not getting punished with Sharky was going to leave them with many sleepless nights. What else can we do? Nidam sighed, we can reach out to Grievous and tell him about this, but he will want evidence from us and we have none. We can tell him to force Sharky to rat on his peers for the sake of a much better deal. Hazel suggested. It doesn't work like that. Felix said indifferently, since Sharky came forward and confessed everything without mentioning the names of his peers, it only means that his survivability was already guaranteed to him. Does that mean someone in the court is on his side? He will most definitely get jail time. Hazel covered her mouth. Don't tell me, Sir Grav. Enough with empty speculations. Captain Charleston interrupted. We will find out tomorrow what his punishment will be and base our next move on it. Upon hearing this, everyone dropped the subject and began leaving the courtroom one by one until only Felix and a couple of attendants were left behind. Felix's mind was still occupied with the case. With the case developing to this state, should I bring Kara forward as a witness? Felix frowned, his arms crossed above his chest. He understood that the noble would be exposed immediately if Kara came forward and ratted him out. As long as she was included in the witness protection program, breaking the privacy contract terms could be avoided. However, Felix was still having difficulty with making this decision. That's because she was going to hand out a high governmental official, someone even higher than Sharky. Her words weren't going to be taken for granted as the truth even if she confessed all of the evil and torture she went through under the Duke's hands. This implied she would be forced to have her memories examined, and Felix had no interest in putting Kara under that machine. Unfortunately, he understood that he couldn't bring her on the stage and ruin a high official's name without consequences. They would examine her memories forcefully to defend her claims. In other words, if Felix wanted the noble to get caught, he had to compromise Kara. Screw this. Felix shrugged his shoulders carelessly. I won't ruin my servant's life for the sake of the realm's goodness. If even Hades doesn't care, why should I? Felix could already be said to have closed the corrupted Spectres organization's case, and since he played a huge role in it, he was guaranteed to receive a massive amount of points with his partner from the entire department. It would ensure they go through the next stage in the captain's governmental position examination. Plus, he even saved Carbuncle's wife. If the Ethereal Elders Council was capable, they should be able to find the mastermind and the remedy to the fallen. As for me, my job here is over. Felix stood up and exited the court at last, having no interest in investing any more time in it. As for the Universal Codex written on the gemstones, it was a fascinating mystery, but Felix realized that he could do nothing about it with his current position. So, why give himself an unnecessary headache? He was merely a passenger in the spirit realm, a traveler one could say, not a hero sent to bring justice and punish the wrongdoers. So, when tomorrow came, and Felix heard that Sharky had been decided to serve an eternity in jail with periodical physical punishment, he didn't seem too bothered. But the same couldn't be uttered about Ravager and his squad mates. How could they? Just because the information checked out to be right. Ravager yelled as he punched the office's wall as hard as he could, boring a hole in it. He was absolutely livid that the trial was concluded in this dissatisfying manner. His squad mates shared the same emotion as him, but none of them reacted as strongly. Give it a rest. You saw the thousands of spirits saved in those hidden locations. Nidam sighed. Without his confession, they would have been left there for God knows how many years. The others seemed to agree with his statement. At the end of the day, Sharky had shown good faith in his confession, and if they didn't show mercy in his judgment, no other criminal would dare trust the juridical system again. So, Grievous and the judges weren't suspected of cooperation at all, as it seemed like they had made the reasonable decision. In fact, the addition of physical punishment, which was a nice way of saying torture, made everyone feel like Grievous was still on the side of the right. After all, an eternal torture periodically wasn't a walk in the park either. Unbeknownst to them, the punishment was given and accepted by Sharky only because both of them understood that the heavenly plane would soon cease to exist if their plan succeeded. 1481 The Blood Array. A couple of days later, the fallen spectre's case had drastically caused one of the largest arrestment spree known in the history of the realm. Almost all the spirits who purchased fallen specters ended up getting punished by the government depending on the number of hired specters. Some had gotten away with a slap in the wrist and some ended up losing their entire businesses or even being put into jail for a long period. As for their fallen specters, they were forcefully retrieved and grouped up in designated areas prepared for them until a cure was found for their conditions. When the number of fallen specters captured was announced, everyone was left absolutely stunned as the number was close to passing a couple of millions. This overwhelming number had caused the law enforcement supreme chief, arbiters, and the high inspectors to receive the biggest backlash possible across the entire realm. Right now, in the Ethereal Elders Council, the law enforcement supreme chief was receiving the scolding of a lifetime. Under your watchful gaze, the shadows have danced and the forbidden has been whispered. Your sacred duty was to be the guardian of balance, the protector of the divine, yet more than 1 million poor souls were tainted. Elder Elysium called out, his voice filled with disappointment, how can you allow this to happen? Supreme Chief Alaric, his form seeming smaller in the spotlight, felt every note of their disappointment. He didn't try to defend himself or give out excuses. He remained silent, taking in their hurtful words, knowing that he deserved what was coming at him. Luckily, Lord Hades hadn't attended the meeting or his fate would have been much worse than just listening to some scolding. Brothers and sisters, I know that I have failed my duties and I will try my best to make amends. Chief Alaric uttered with an icy tone, starting with finding the traitor in my department. Chief Alaric was smart enough to understand that without insider help, it would be near impossible for such a massive criminal operation to go unnoticed. The rest of the elders weren't too surprised by this as they also thought the same. There is no need to look further, I think we already have a main suspect. Elder Kraken shared, I heard that Inspector Nolver has been giving Captain Charleson's squad a hard time since the moment they began investigating the fallen organization. Felix told him about this in private, knowing that Inspector Nolver had to go away if he wanted to remain in the law enforcement department. After all, he was their competition supervisor and they literally just went to war with him. He was bound to create trouble for them at every turn. Now, even outsiders bring me information about my own department. Chief Alaric got displeased internally while showing a grateful front. It had been a long time since he felt such shame and humiliation in front of his own peers, and he was going to cull the entire department to seethe his rage. Arbitar Danker, examine Nolver and see if he has any relations to the fallen organization. Chief Alaric ordered. As you command, Chief. With an arbiter put on his tail and his deep involvement with the previous cover-ups on the fallen specters, it could be said to be the end of Inspector Nolver. Duke Humphrey knew this and still didn't show much of a reaction in the council. He remained silent and kept watching his peers move on from one agenda to the other. When they reached the cure agenda, Elder Kraken spoke with a deep frown, I have seen the Universal Codex writings on those gemstones. I don't know how they got their hands on such a thing. We have to inform Lord Hades about this. Elder Sheol said. Agreed, Universal Codex language might imply the involvement of higher beings. Aren't you guys taking this a bit too seriously? Duke Humphrey uttered calmly, you know that our spirit realm is full of mysteries and those gemstones could have been found somewhere. Let's not bother our Lord until we make sure we eliminate all possibilities. He is right. Elder Elysium nodded in agreement, our Lord has just entered his meditation session and it will be a grave mistake to awaken him without first trying to solve the problem on our own. The elders nodded one by one in support, understanding that their Lord had given them a considerable amount of authority to handle such issues without annoying him. So, it was best to investigate the gemstones on their own and only seek out his help when they eliminate all other options. Good, I bought a couple of days for me, but I can't stall for longer. Duke Humphrey thought to himself, I have to start the ritual tonight. Meanwhile, Elder Kraken had sighed glancing at Duke Humphrey ever since he proposed to not involve Lord Hades. Felix had already told him that a noble was the mastermind and it might be even one of the elders. Still, Duke Humphrey merely stated the obvious, and his intervention was logical. So, he merely caused Elder Kraken to have a bit of suspicion in his direction. Duke Humphrey noticed Kraken's looks and continued behaving normally, not too bothered by him. After a while, the meeting was delayed until tomorrow to continue discussing the cure if there was any. When Duke Humphrey arrived at his massive mansion, he went straight to the dungeon, still draped in his prestigious robe. After reaching the bottom, the air, moist and dense with the echoes of silent whimpers, embraced him with the acquaintance of a partner in countless dark deeds. The dungeon had the same gruesome spectacle from 3 decades ago. In it were spirits, each one manacled, each one bearing marks of torment. Duke Humphrey's lips curled into a subtle, cold smile as he observed their suffering, a distorted kind of artistry painting his face. "You're in luck, your eternal suffering will soon be over," he uttered as he walked to the center of the massive hall, surrounded by the tortured negativity fuelers. His words didn't seem to solicit any kind of hopeful reaction. Everyone's faces were already engraved with utter despair, knowing, certain, that their lives would be like this until the day they muster enough courage to kick themselves from the heavenly plane. Unbothered by their lack of reaction, Duke Humphrey walked to the nearest one and stabbed him right in the thigh with his finger. The spirit didn't even let out a whimper as he had already grown numb from such pain. Blood began to pour out of the wound after Duke Humphrey pulled his finger. The Duke placed a bucket under the wound and went to the second victim, repeating the process. After collecting 2 full buckets of blood, he returned to the center of the hall and kneeled down. He put his finger inside the bucket and pulled it out until it was entirely covered in thick blood. Then, with careful precision, he began to draw an immense array on the cold, stone floor, using the mysterious language of the Universal Codex, each symbol pulsating with forbidden power. The array was a masterful, intricate design, a maze of symbols and patterns, each one carefully drawn to channel and manipulate the profound energies it would soon unleash. It looked as if the universe's secrets were transcribed there, a silent whisper of the cosmos scribed in blood. If Felix were to see this, he would be even more confused about the origin of Duke Humphrey, as there was no way a mortal would be this proficient in a language even primogenitors struggled to understand. The spirits, their bodies contorted and chains rattling softly, bore silent witness to the forbidden act unfolding before them. Fear and sorrow merged in their spectral eyes, windows to the countless torments they endured. Some, the pain too great, had their eyes closed, whispering silent prayers, seeking a liberation that seemed more and more like an illusion with each passing moment. Meanwhile, every stroke Duke Humphrey made was deliberate, the array slowly coming to life, and symbols seemed to ignite with a haunting, eerie glow. The energy grew, the array expanding and contracting as if breathing, the symphony reaching a cacophonous crescendo. As the final drop of blood connected the last symbol, the movement stopped and the illusionary light disappeared. It seemed like the array became a Scrabble on the tainted ground, yet, Duke Humphrey had a pleased smile on his face, a rare reaction. "The array is done, now I just need the sacrifice and the fuel to activate it." He smiled while his predatory eyes swam from one spirit to another, causing them to feel shivers course down their spine. Even when they were tortured, it seemed like a much worse fate awaited them. 1482 The Blood Array. 2. Duke Humphrey floated to the tormented spirits and removed the machine tubes and the chains from their bodies. Weak and helpless, even when freed, the spirits couldn't muster an ounce of strength to defend themselves. Their eyes were the only thing moving, watching him pick them up and meticulously arrange them at pivotal points marked on the extensive, intricately designed blood array. To avoid them ruining his array, he kept suppressing them with his telekinesis pressure, affixing them to their positions. After he was done with the spirits, he collected all the sinister dark gemstones and used them to decorate the entire array. The various gemstones scattered around the place gave the blood array a morbid glow, casting eerie shadows on the suffering spirits. Yet, he hadn't finished. Duke Humphrey removed the celestial pendant from his neck and placed it carefully at the center of the blood array. Its celestial brilliance was a stark contrast to the macabre scene around it. The Duke folded his hands and began to utter words in the Universal Codex language, the very words that carried the whispers of the cosmos, resonating with the primal energies that wove the fabric of existence. His voice wasn't loud, yet every word uttered echoed across the entire dungeon. Once the incarnation reached its celestial crescendo, the pendant's core forged an unseen connection with the blood array, threads of celestial energy weaving through the intricate patterns. The blood array, now pulsating with forbidden life, slowly began draining the negative energies from the suffering spirits, pulling the essence from every gemstone in its vicinity. Arg, ugh, sob, sob. The air was charged with the silent screams and sorrowful whimpers of the spirits, their essence being pulled into the blood array against their will. This is going to take a couple of days at least. Duke Humphrey wasn't too pleased with the speed of the array's absorption, but he knew that he couldn't be complaining at the moment. Without the pendant, this wouldn't have been even possible. Duke Humphrey praised with an envious tone, even a trash item from that place can power up a third-degree array. I have to return at all costs. Duke Humphrey understood that the pendant was using a new type of energy called celestial energy. It existed only in that place and a tiny bit of it was enough to rival millions of elemental energy stones. A couple of days, let's hope Hades remains in his meditation session until then. Duke Humphrey wished in his mind as he watched the blood array continue getting brighter and brighter at a steady rate. He knew that the moment the pendant's energy ran out, he wouldn't be hidden anymore from his all-seeing eyes. It was an instant checkmate if that happened. Meanwhile, Felix had just received a message from the hospital. It notified him that Carbuncle's wife had awoken from her deep slumber. Since she had no master and no family to act as her guardian, he filled in his name. I will be back soon, Felix said to Sekiro and Kura before taking off from Elder Kraken's mansion. In a short while, he arrived at the room and approached Carbuncle's wife with a soft smile, trying his best to not look cold. My savior, how could I ever thank you? Carbuncle's wife bowed her head with great difficulty after noticing Felix. Please don't force yourself. Felix pushed her shoulder gently and sat next to her. He soon inquired about her well-being and if she felt any discomfort or pain. After hearing that she was fine and pain-free, he proceeded to orchestrate her discharge from the hospital, wanting to take her with him to Elder Kraken's mansion. She agreed, placing her trust in him. Listen, I know that you are still pretty shook and this situation will seem quite peculiar to you, but I have to let you on something. Felix mentioned calmly after helping Carbuncle's wife settle down in her own private room. He understood that there would never be a perfect time to lay down on her the truth, so he might as well feed it to her right now. I am listening. Carbuncle's wife replied softly. Now that she had recovered from her wounds and cleaned herself, she indeed looked quite beautiful, but not to Felix since she was still a descendant of a hamster-like species. Felix took a deep breath with his eyes looking upward and then narrated the mission that was assigned to him by Carbuncle. He told her that she was his wife in the living world and that he had entered the spirit realm for the sake of reuniting with her. He told her about how he became a scribe and was watching her from a distance, wanting to save her every day, but he couldn't without jeopardizing his scribe position. The problem was he might not even save her since the instant scribes decide to share their knowledge or act on it, the divine punishment befell them almost immediately like they had judgment swords pointed at their heads. So, he placed his hopes on Nebula, teaching and preparing her for the mission, but, eventually, Felix appeared and handled the rescue mission. As Carbuncle's wife listened to his story, she didn't know whether to believe him or call him a crazy head. But, the fact that scribes were infamous for knowing their previous lives made her somewhat inclined to believe him. In her head, Felix had nothing much to earn from lying to her, especially when she was a mere dark spirit with no special skills. Your husband has told me to tell you that you have two choices and he will respect both of them equally. Felix shared, the first one, you will receive your old life memories and carry on the rest of your life with him as a couple. The second one, you will remain with your current memories and personality and hopefully work under him as a servant. He will protect and take care of you like no other even if you don't accept his love. There is also the third option, which is living here as a servant until the day you decide to recover your memories. Felix added. Carbuncle didn't tell him about this, but he understood that both decisions were considered permanent and tough to pick from. Meanwhile, the third option would give plenty of time for her to see Carbuncle's true character after living with him. Who knows? They might even fall in love again without even needing their precious memories. Upon hearing those options, Carbuncle's wife was left in silence. She glanced at Felix's emotionless face and could see that he was not trying to trick or harm her. She had no clue how this Carbuncle was and whether he was a good person or not, but the fact she was given 3 options and none of them had an ounce of bad intention, she could feel his love. Feeling it was one thing, but accepting it was another. In the end, Carbuncle's wife smiled bitterly and said, "I have just lived through a trauma that should have destroyed me 100 times by now. I honestly don't think I have it in me to trust another stranger again." Understandable. Felix nodded in agreement. "If you can't trust him, trust me at least when I tell you that he will never lay a finger on you. The love he has for you is something I can't even fathom." The fact that Carbuncle sought to revive his wife through any means possible and when he failed to do so, killed himself to reunite with her in the afterlife was enough proof of his crazy love and loyalty. "I don't know." Carbuncle's wife tightened her fists and said, "Is it possible to meet him first?" "Of course, just tell me when, and I will take you there." Felix nodded. "How about now?" Carbuncle's wife said, "I don't think I can relax before I handle this. Let's go." Without a second wasted, Felix positioned Carbuncle's wife on the back of his 3-headed crimson lion and departed in the direction of the Northern Lights city. Meanwhile, Carbuncle had seen everything that happened and even tapped into their telepathic conversation. When he realized that she was coming to him, he was left absolutely frozen in his place. He had anticipated and readied for this day for so long, and now that it was happening, he was as nervous as a teenage boy going to ask his crush to go to the prom with him. "I have to take a shower. I have to shave. No, I have to clean my office first, she doesn't like seeing a mess." He kept turning his head back and forth, his heart beating out of his chest out of agitation. Who would have known that the great Carbuncle would be this cute when it came to his wife? 1483 The right choice. After a couple of minutes of emotional distress, Carbuncle finally realized that he was overreacting. His wife possessed a different personality and set of memories, the things she used to love and hate were different. "I might end up creeping her up if I acted like this before her." Carbuncle coughed as he fixed his little tie. Be cool, you only have one shot to impress her and win her over." Then, he waited with bated breath in front of his mansion's main gate, standing upright and staring at the sky without a single blink. He knew that it would take a while before they arrived, but he didn't care. He kept waiting and waiting for hours until a tiny dark dot appeared high above. In a few moments, the 3-headed crimson lion landed in his garden a dozen meters away from him. When Carbuncle saw his wife for the first time in millions of years this close to him, a loving smile couldn't help but break on his face. He approached them with eyes slightly glazing with water. "Amelia." He whispered her name, a melody of love and yearning, but her eyes, those mirrors to her essence, reflected the shadows of forgotten love and unremembered whispers. "Hello, sir." Amelia bowed her head respectfully, seemingly not daring to meet his eyes. Carbuncle's heart ached at the sight, understanding that she treated him like any other high governmental official. Instead of letting this affect him, he kept his soft gentle smile and introduced himself. "My lady, I am called Carbuncle, but you may refer to me with whatever you feel comfortable with." "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir." Amelia introduced herself politely. "My name is Noha." "The pleasure is mine, Lady Noha." Carbuncle called her by this name, knowing that calling her Amelia was weird when she had no memories of her previous life. "Please grace my humble abode with your visit," Carbuncle offered as he extended his arm welcomely. Amelia glanced at Carbuncle for a moment before nodding in acceptance. Delighted, Carbuncle led them back to his mansion. As she watched his back, Amelia touched her heart with a slightly disappointed expression. With everything that Felix had told her, she thought she would feel something when she met with Carbuncle. Alas, her emotions didn't even tingle a bit, which disappointed her somewhat. Felix noticed her reaction and advised her. Don't judge too early, you have just escaped from hell and your heart can't be already open to accept new people in it. Don't rush things and whatever is going to happen will happen in due time. Don't rush things and whatever is going to happen will happen in due time. Felix feared that she would make a rash decision of not accepting Carbuncle due to this little problem. He would hate for that to happen as Carbuncle didn't spend this much effort just to be left like this without even a chance to win her over. I know. Fortunately, Amelia wasn't that heartless as she could feel Carbuncle's genuine happiness and feelings directed at her, something she never experienced before in the heavenly plane. After they arrived at the dining hall, Carbuncle offered them to order anything they wanted on the menu. Felix took full liberty while Amelia was a bit shy and didn't order much. When the food arrived, the conversations held between them were quite awkward and downright uncomfortable. It was expected, one side was burning with love and affection while the other seemed like she was on a dinner date with a complete stranger. The worst part, Carbuncle couldn't mention anything about their previous life as it would be considered a breach of the rules. Since Amelia's life was darker than a moonless night, she had nothing to speak about. Carbuncle glanced at Felix with a beseeching look, wanting his help to improve the mood. Alas, with Felix's emotionless personality, he couldn't even brighten his own mood. He lowered his head and continued eating his food, ignoring Carbuncle's pleas. Little prick! Carbuncle's eyelids twitched. Knowing that Felix was useless, Carbuncle realized that he had only one chance to convince her before she finished her dinner. So, he mustered his courage and coughed to attract their attention. When Amelia looked at him, Carbuncle showed a gentle smile and said, I understand that the stars in your sky may seem unfamiliar. But I wish for you to stay, to give our shared stars a chance to shine again. But, how can I trust you with my life when I can't recall a single memory of you? Amelia said with her lips tightened. That's where I come in. Felix interjected, just say the word, and your memories will be restored. Carbuncle nodded in agreement, if you still feel nothing towards me after you recover your memories, then all I can say is that our story ended when you died and I will accept it as such. Will you really accept it? Amelia asked. My love for you won't die out, but I will stop chasing you and wishing you happiness from a distance. Carbuncle smiled, for I only wish that you live happily and freely. Smooth. Felix praised in his mind, knowing that Carbuncle meant every single word of it even when it seemed like the thought of it happening hurt him immensely. After all, even when we wish for our loved ones to be happy, a part of us would still greed to be happy with them instead of seeing them with someone else. That's a whole different level of hurt and many people experienced it in their lives. This entire situation couldn't help but make Felix think of Asna. He raised his head and eyed the ceiling, wondering if she was living a happy life without him in her life. But soon, he shook his head at the thought. Asna will never be happy as long as she is an imprisoner of her past and future. Felix uttered calmly, the day I free her from her celestial shackles is the day she will experience true happiness. I will give it a shot. Suddenly, Felix's thoughts were interrupted by Amelia agreeing to Carbuncle's offer. Really? Carbuncle's eyes shone brighter, his wings shimmered with renewed hope. The notion of his wife returning fully caused him to feel butterflies in his stomach. I don't think I can stay near you without my memories. I can see you hurting deep down and still, showing a bright smile to comfort me. Amelia said with a faint smile, I would rather give both of us a closure whether it's a good or a bad one. Felix nodded in concurrence without saying much. Her decision was the correct one in this peculiar situation. While he had given her 3 choices, in reality, only the first one should be picked if she wanted to continue her life normally. If she decided to be Carbuncle's servant without his memories, neither of them would be at ease as Carbuncle would want to offer her his affection and win her over. Since she was a distinct person entirely, she would feel like he was falling in affection with the outer exterior of his wife and this wouldn't feel like authentic love to her. so, she could either stay as far as possible from him or give her previous life a chance to return. Good thing she made the better decision, as even Felix would feel devastated by the thought of Carbuncle losing his wife once and for all after everything he had gone through. The second chapter will be released later tonight. 1484 A beautiful overdue reunion. After the decision was made, Felix and Amelia finished their dinner and returned to Elder Kraken's mansion. Felix told him about everything and requested his help with Amelia's memories, to which he agreed. He had already given them his word on this matter and had prepared the memories necessary from Carbuncle in the living world. Without further ado, they exited the mansion and went to the same abandoned house on the outskirts of the capital. The memories reformation machine was still situated there. Elder Kraken wasn't worried about someone finding it, since he would get alerted if they stepped into his territory. What if her personality changed too? Felix frowned. This process might make the situation even worse. Don't worry, it's different this time. Elder Kraken clarified as he wired Amelia to the machine. We will be merely putting new memories on top of her old ones, and it won't affect her personality as drastically as yours. Felix nodded in understanding. In his case, he was like a blank page, and whatever was put inside of him shaped his personality. But Amelia already possessed her own personality, and those memories would merely awaken her old self. Are you ready? Elder Kraken asked. Amelia nodded. Elder Kraken started the process right after, infusing all the memories given to him by Carbuncle into Amelia. Obviously, Carbuncle didn't hand over millions of years' worth of memories, but just enough for Amelia to understand that their life as a married couple wasn't a lie, and to remind her of all the good and bad times they spent together. As Amelia was absorbing those memories, a smile kept spreading on her lips. She was reliving her previous life, and she was more than pleased with how it turned out to be. When the memories stopped coming in, her face was already a mess with tears. She realized that what she had with Carbuncle wasn't just a common love story, but what would one call a once-in-a-lifetime companionship. The fact that Carbuncle was a primogenitor and considered a deity in the universe, yet he never cheated on her or touched another female after marrying her, spoke great volumes about his eternal loyalty. Unbeknownst to her, Carbuncle never touched another female even after her death. Are you okay? Felix asked. I am okay now. Amelia smiled and then requested, is it possible to return me to my husband? Right away. Felix smiled back. Amelia thanked Elder Kraken for his assistance, and both of them returned to Carbuncle's mansion. During their flight back, Felix asked her about many things. One of them was her reason for accepting Carbuncle right away as her husband the moment she remembered their life together. Her answer was direct and simple. You won't understand unless you saw it with your own eyes. I see. Felix refrained from asking any more questions, knowing that both Carbuncle and Amelia deserved each other. It was the only answer he needed to know. After dropping her off in the garden, he saw that Carbuncle was waiting for them again near the gate. He gave him a slight head nod and left them alone. As he flew away, he couldn't help but glance one more time behind him. What he saw slightly warmed his frozen cold heart. They stood there, encircled by the enchanting Flora, in a tight, loving embrace, their fur mingling, creating a tapestry of moonlight silver and emerald green. It was as though the universe itself had paused to witness this beautiful overdue reunion. Carbuncle can at last put down the drugs. Felix chuckled to himself as he envisioned the other Carbuncle hearing about this news. He was certain that he would erase his wisp of consciousness almost immediately with a happy smile, stretching from ear to ear. Right now, Felix was heading back to the mansion to inform Elder Kraken and speak with his masters. During his entire stay in the spirit realm, he could be said to finally have something worthy to report. Meanwhile, in the living world, you sure have improved your skills. Now, you can cheat without me noticing. Thor scoffed with an irritated tone as he moved a bishop piece in front of a pawn, seemingly sacrificing it. And you sure have gotten better at ***ing every time you find yourself in a losing position. J. Ramongendra sneered, Plus, it's not even possible to cheat on chess. With snakes like you, anything is possible. Thor retorted. He didn't seem too happy as the last chance he had to win the game was the bishop sacrifice, but Ramongendra was smart enough to ignore it and continue with his play. Now, he knew that he was F***ed unless Ramongendra made a blunder. But, who we are talking about here? It's two primogenitors. There was no such a thing as making a blunder for them when they could anticipate hundreds of moves ahead. Checkmate. This match doesn't count, Thor complained immediately as he pushed down his pieces and picked up a wine bottle. I wasn't drinking my juice. Whatever you tell yourself to feel better, loser. Hormungandr grinned while fixing the pieces, preparing for a second game. Pause the game for a bit, Felix wants to talk to you guys. Suddenly, Elder Kraken informed everyone. This caused the entire consciousness space to come to a halt as even Lord Shiva and Lord Loki had their ears peaked in interest. About damn time. Thor chided, that little brat forgot about us the moment he died, how can he treat his masters like this? No one bothered to entertain his remark, but they were quite curious about Felix's desire to speak to them at last. First of all, he greeted you all and apologized for not reaching out sooner. Elder Kraken delivered Felix's messages. Is he okay there? Did something happen? Lady Sphinx inquired, knowing that Felix would not speak with them unless he had something to show or he was in grave danger. No, he just wanted to check on you and inform Carbuncle that he has finally helped his wife reunite with his main consciousness. Elder Kraken said with a faint smile. The moment Carbunels heard this, he started coughing out loud, a deep purplish cloud out of his mouth and nose, choking on it from shock. "FO for real?" he exclaimed with reddened eyes, either from the drugs or emotion. Yes, and he even helped convince her to recover her memories. Elder Kraken nodded, so, it can be said that your main consciousness has gotten his peace at last. That little. Carbuncle's words were left stuck in his throat. He wanted to say a lot of things, but he realized that his main consciousness must have already said whatever was in his mind. So, he merely smiled widely in bliss and remained floating on the consciousness ocean, feeling like a massive weight was removed out of his shoulder. The others could sense his peace and calm, something all of them wished dearly to have. Alas, unlike Carbuncle, who merely wanted his wife and nothing else in this universe, they still had many things to settle before their hearts could be cleared out. Are you going to leave? Lady Sphinx asked Carbuncle. Not yet, not until I see that boy return to us. Carbuncle shook his head, I have to thank him personally. When Carbuncle's wisp of consciousness was awakened the first time, he really never expected that this little runt would actually live up to his promise. The fact that he was dead and struggling in the spirit world, yet, he still helped him out, made him feel more than grateful. For now, he said nothing else and remained floating on the ocean with a blissful smile, knowing that another him was in the company of his dear wife. When the others saw this, they didn't bother him anymore. Is he anywhere near acquiring the reincarnation opportunity? Lady Sphinx asked. He has just put down a massive underground criminal organization and he will be moving on to the final examination of the captain position. Elder Kraken nodded, whether he succeeds or not, he will be given at least a post as a low law enforcer over his achievements. Elder Kraken knew that many law enforcers were about to get replaced of the department after Inspector Nolver went down. After all, there was no way he had no underlings treasonous the government as well. This meant many positions would be unoccupied and Felix and Ravager had the biggest chances to fill them in. That's good to hear. I have already contacted to Lord Quetzalcoatl and he told me he is prepared to assist us as long as he doesn't get close to the heavenly plane. Lady Sphinx shared. 1485 High Inspector Charlson. If he doesn't get close to the heavenly plane, how are we supposed to find and retrieve Felix's soul before it enters a new body? Thor frowned. The original plan was to steal Felix's soul from Karen and the only way to do so was through being close to the heavenly plane. After all, the moment the Karens put the collected spirits on the heavenly plane and embarked on a new journey, it was almost impossible to track them down. He doesn't care about any of that. Lady Sphinx said, he has already angered Lord Hades enough and he doesn't want to completely disrespect him by stealing a soul right from under his nose. I will see what I can do to keep Felix's soul intact and track down the Karen. Elder Kraken said. Tracking wasn't the only issue with their plan, as the fact that Felix would be losing both his memories and spiritual prowess was bound to happen. The only good thing coming out of reincarnation was being put into a much more fortunate environment, ensuring a better life for the soul as a reward for his achievement in the spirit realm. Though, it wouldn't really matter much when you couldn't even remember your afterlife. Hence, why no one bothered to choose the reincarnation opportunity after stepping into the government. Do your best, but don't get too invested and attract Lord Hades' attention to you. Hormungandra advised, we don't want to ruin your life out there after everything you have done to reach your status. Don't worry, I know what I am doing. Elder Kraken smiled kindly. He was indeed taking way too many risks for Felix's sake, and if it was simply to repay Felix's awakening his wisp of consciousness, then he was overdoing it. After all, one could say that he had paid his debt the moment he bestowed Felix his water manipulation. Anything else was merely doing Felix and his masters a massive favor. Back in the heavenly plane, a few hours after Felix's report to his masters, a sudden piece of information caused the entire law enforcement department to halt. Inspector Nolver and more than 5 law enforcers from 4 different squads were arrested and put away by the Arbiter himself after evidence of their involvement with the Fallen Spectres organization had surfaced. They sure moved quicker than expected. Captain Charleston addressed this while sitting in his office with the rest of his squad. Haha. Serves him right. Hazel laughed in delight. Arbiter Danker sure is powerful. Ravager commentated with a serious tone, he extracted more than 5 pieces of key evidence in such a short time. Neither Nolver nor his subordinates were given a chance to defend themselves. Based on what they heard, Inspector Nolver and his people were taken straight to their cells and stripped away of their positions, awaiting for their trial to launch. None of them denied the acquisitions, as the evidence against them was pretty heavy. With the Fallen Spectres cases being now questioned and investigated, all sorts of abnormal actions related to them were caught. Either hiding evidence, burying cases, enforcing new rules/protocols, and the list goes on. Inspector Nolver understood that he had no way of escaping the charges. So, he didn't bother wasting his energy in denial. It doesn't matter if I got caught now, the second phase of the plan is already in motion. Inspector Nolver smiled coldly while cuffed up to a wall. The day of liberation is near. He didn't even tell the Duke about his situation, as he had informed them not to bother him for the next few days. Inspector Nolver understood that he must be working his ass off to make the second phase of their plan work. He had no idea how he would do it, but he had full trust in his master. Meanwhile, the news had sent waves across the department and even outside of it. Many spirits realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to enter the government due to the many available positions simultaneously. So, they began their preparation to apply for the examination the moment the government opened up the recruitment. Alas, just like this was a unique opportunity, the circumstances of it happening were also unique. Unique in the sense that a single squad had brought down one of the worst criminal organizations known to the spirit realm. This meant that they had earned a significant amount of credit to help them get promoted straightway to a higher position without any competition. While no announcements were made, almost all squad captains were already congratulating Captain Charleston on his upcoming promotion to become the new High Inspector. Since all of this happened abruptly and there was no preparation whatsoever for a change of inspectors, Captain Charleston was called to the Arbiter's office and he was advanced on the spot. I hope you understand why we won't be holding any ceremony for the promotion in the upcoming days. Arbiter Danker said with a bitter smile as he put Inspector Nolver's insignia on Charleston's chest. I don't mind if we don't hold it at all. High Inspector Charleston uttered with a solemn tone as he saluted, I have never been a fan of such formalities and would like to carry on with my new duties right away. Usually, high inspector positions were almost never empty since the higher one climbed the governmental ladder, the harder it was to get ahead. In the case of Inspector Nolver, his position should have been contested by all interested captains throughout the entire heavenly plane, which would create one of the biggest competitions ever for a governmental position. However, with Captain Charleson's credit score being over the roof after exposing the fallen organization and Inspector Nolver being part of it, ending up leaving his post empty, all the stars aligned for the captain to get a direct promotion. Haha, as expected of you, straightforward and professional as always. Arbiter Dankert chuckled, too bad, the ceremony is a must to celebrate your achievements and establish your new authority. I am honored. The honor is ours to have such a fine upright enforcer on our side. Arbiter Danker complimented, meaning every single word of it. He had heard and watched videos of what happened between Captain Charleson and Inspector Nolver. The way he was pressured, hindered, and even used an arbiter's status to stop him, but he refused to cave in. Arbiter Danker understood that many squad captains would have done what Inspector Nolver wanted for the sake of moving up the ladder faster. So, he was truly satisfied with having Charleson as the new inspector. I will leave the hiring situation for the new empty positions in your hands. Arbiter Dankor informed. I will get it handled. High Inspector Charleson saluted and then took off, wearing his new insignia and carrying his inspector's outfit on his shoulders. After he returned to his old office, he was surprised to see that his squad mates had adorned the entire office with balloons and other celebratory decorations. Congratulations, Captain! Haha! He is a high inspector now, don't call him that. No one more deserving of such promotion than you, congratulations! Nidam, Hazel, Ravager, Miss Sani, and even Felix uttered some nice words for their captain's sake. The moment he was called by the arbiter, they knew immediately he would get promoted and they prepared this small party for him. We know that you hate parties and even more during work time, but you aren't our captain anymore to stop us. Nidam chuckled after seeing Inspector Charleson's face turn annoyed. I have lost my position for a few minutes and you already become this unruly. Inspector Charleson smiled through his vexation. You sure deserve a beating. Everyone chuckled in amusement and began their party, which could be also considered a celebration over their case closure. After the celebration was concluded, Inspector Charleson clicked twice on his wine glass and notified everyone. I have been given responsibility over filling the empty positions in the department. I have determined to appoint Nidam as the new captain of this squad. As for Ravager and Traveler, they will be advanced to permanent members of the squad, which means... Inspector Charleson hesitated for a little with a faint smile before announcing, Welcome to the government. Author note, a small quality of life change to the schedule. 2 chapters will be released on Wednesday from now on and 1 chapter will be released on Tuesday. P.S. My apologies for the schedule changes and erratic releases during the day. I am still in the process of building a new stock after returning from the holiday and burning most of it. With the increased weekly release, it ain't easy to keep up, but I am trying my best. 1486 waiting for the call. We are in? Just like that. Ravager couldn't believe his ears. He had desired to join the government for a very long time now and even when he applied to become a captain, he knew that it would be extremely difficult to join it in such fashion. But, he applied anyway for the sake of his little sister's revenge. When you have the right qualifications, opportunity, and support from a figure of authority, it's that easy. Nidam chuckled. Thank you for thinking highly of us. Felix bowed his head a little in appreciation, not too shocked by his announcement. He had already expected as much to happen. There is some paperwork needed to be handled before you become a registered governmental official and receive benefits. Captain Charleson informed, I will have it taken care of quickly. Felix and Ravager nodded in gratitude. What about the captain's examination? Ravager soon inquired. You have qualified straight to the next stage of the examination. But since you have done it through other means, the qualification stage is still active, and the other contestants can join the next stage too. Captain Charleston explained. In other words, Felix and Ravager were considered like any other law enforcer, and this qualification stage was meant for golden spirits, not governmental officials. Hence, the direct qualification. This means Nebula and Seraphel can still contest for the captain's position. Ravager uttered with an irritated tone, "It would have been better if they got eliminated, but whatever." Felix couldn't care less about any of this, as he was satisfied with just joining the government and getting the reincarnation opportunity. As for the captain's position, he had no interest in fighting for it. To avoid unnecessary drama, he didn't bother to mention this to his squad mates, knowing that they would annoy him to stay in the competition. A couple of hours later, Felix could be seen sitting in the living room of his new mansion in the northern district with Kura and Sekiro. The mansion was small compared to Elder Kraken's, since Felix's governmental rank was at the bottom, but it was 10 times better than any other house outside of the northern district. Who would have known that it would take you less than a year to become a governmental official, something that 99% of spirits haven't achieved in centuries? Sekiro smiled wryly, "You sure are something special." "Yes, yes." Kura nodded excitedly as she kept looking around her new home. Both of them were deeply delighted, as they felt like their future was finally secured. When Felix saw their expressions, he couldn't help but shake his head. They had no clue that Felix was going to accept the reincarnation opportunity and leave the spirit realm, which meant they would return to being masterless again. "Do whatever you want, I will be heading out," Felix uttered as he stood up. "Do you want me to prepare food for your return?" Kura asked. "No, I might be late." With that, Felix went to meet up with Elder Kraken to finalize his escape plan. "Listen, the reincarnation process is quite direct and doesn't need Lord Hades to supervise it. Usually, Elder Sheol runs the operation, but since almost no one bothers to reincarnate, I can find a way to take this duty out of his hand," Elder Kraken said with a solemn tone. "This will allow me to control where your soul will land and when it will land on a new body. With such information, we can track down the Karen, and Lord Quetzalcoatl will steal your soul's jar from him and take it back to your body. This is the summary of the plan for now." "It sounds good, but isn't it quite risky for you?" Felix frowned. "Won't Lord Hades penalize you when he finds out that you helped me escape with my memories and soul power intact?" "There is always that chance, but don't worry about it." Elder Kraken smiled. "No matter what happened, I have already reached the pinnacle in my field, and there is nothing soul-related I can research in my current state." Elder Kraken entered the spirit realm willingly through suicide for the sake of learning more about the afterlife. After spending God knows how many years and even becoming an ethereal elder, he could be uttered to have already achieved his dreams and goals. In other words, it didn't even matter to him if Lord Hades kicked him out of the heavenly plane, as he considered his life to be complete. "Don't give me that look, I know what I am doing," Elder Kraken warned. "All you have to do is focus on getting out of the spirit realm and returning to your body. Lord Hades might even prioritize coming after you if he found out midway." "I am well aware." Felix nodded with a serious look. He comprehended that Lord Hades never killed anyone, so there was a high chance of punishing Felix by throwing him somewhere in the spirit realm with his memories still intact. This meant he would be wandering and roaming the spirit realm while his consciousness was active, which was thousands of times much worse than any other punishment. The worst part? He would get branded as a blacklisted spirit, which meant he would get ignored by all passing Karens for eternity, and his soul would be unable to possess anybody. Felix was told about all of this by Captain Charleston to make him understand that there were stages to getting kicked out of the heavenly plane. "For now, spend all of your Loomis and time in absorbing as many spiritual treasures as possible. I have also cooked a decent stash of spiritual treasures for you," Kraken said. "Empower your soul to the limit, as you won't be having another chance like this again." Felix nodded in understanding. "Now excuse me, I have to go kiss Shoal's ass a little to me handle the reincarnation process." Elder Kraken chuckled, seemingly not minding this at all. "Thank you, Elder, truly, Thank you for everything. Still, Felix bowed his head deeply in gratitude, knowing that his life would have been a catastrophe in the heavenly plane without Kraken's help. Thank me when you return to your body, for now, focus on the plan. I won't let you down. For the next 2 days, Felix spent every hour of the day absorbing mountains of spiritual treasures until he started to get weird looks from Sekiro and Kura. Elder Kraken had at least given him a stash worth 1 to 2 million of Lumus, and with what he had purchased out of his own pocket, he collected enough to at least tenfold his spiritual prowess. Sekiro and Kura had inquired Felix about his reason for doing this and why he had wasted so much money on them, but he didn't bother answering them. He locked himself in his room and kept improving his soul, waiting patiently for Elder Kraken's call. While he was waiting for his call, Duke Humphrey was also waiting patiently for his blood array to activate. At the moment, it was shimmering so brightly, the entire dungeon seemed to have been painted with blood. At the center of it, Duke Humphrey was seen sitting in midair with his eyes affixed on the illuminating blood array. The celestial pendant already become dim and looked like it was about to break apart into fine dust. Meanwhile, the tormented spirits were no longer there, leaving behind them small blood-red floating marbles. As for the dark gemstones, they were turned into fine dust days ago. 5 minutes, 5 more minutes and the entire capital shall fall into the depth of despair. Duke Humphrey smiled coldly. 5 more minutes. Second chapter will be released at night. 1487 The Blood Beam's Expansion. While he seemed confident and mighty, deep down, Duke Humphrey was scared that Lord Hades would appear before him and stop all of this with a mere glance. Even though the pendant was keeping his eyes and other scribes' eyes away from him, he was growing more and more antsy by the second. Seconds went by and then minutes, just like it seemed it was going to take a little bit more time than he anticipated. The blood array, saturated in sanguine fluid, began to convulse, a foreboding radiance seeping from its intricate lines. The crimson gleam intensified, converging above into a monumental beam of luminescence before erupting into the ceiling. Rumble rumble! The ceiling was smashed wide open and the beam continued its uninterrupted journey, breaking apart Duke Humphrey's mansion like it was made out of Legos. Ha ha ha! That's it! Duke Humphrey protected himself with a telekinesis shield as he watched the blood array reach the sky akin to a beacon of malevolent allure. The blood beam captured the gazes of every entity near the capital. A sea of faces, bathed in the otherworldly red glow, lifted their eyes in sync, each countenance edged with shock and awe. Hey? What's that? The hell? Am I tripping or is there a red beam touching the sky? Is Lord Hades going to descend to the capital at last? Some thought the beams were related to Lord Hades and some thought a governmental official was putting on a show. No one was scared of the beam even when its size and color were alarming. It was expected as this was the heavenly plane and no one would dare attack its capital in such a fashion. Alas! Those thoughts started to evaporate from their minds after they noticed the red beam expanding with alarming swiftness. It's not giving off good vibes at all. Felix narrowed his eyes coldly as he watched from his window the fast approaching walls of the red beam. Since he was in the northern district, the blood beam was extremely close to him, making him sense its ominous aura. I won't be able to escape on foot with Kura and Sekiro. Realizing that the speed of the beam was alarmingly quick, Felix didn't hesitate to use his teleportation ability and appear in front of his servants. Before they could react to his sudden appearance, he took hold of them both and teleported at the last second, right before the blood beam engulfed his new mansion. Rumble rumble! The blood beam's walls didn't destroy the mansion like it did before, but it caused the ground to tremble wherever it went, making everyone realize its danger. Run! What the F***ck is going on? Is this the apocalypse? Many spirits across the capital weren't as capable as Felix, causing them to get devoured by the blood beam, disappearing almost instantly inside its crimson walls. Its red tendrils weaved through the buildings and the skies, a suffocating grip around the heart of the realm. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Spectral carriages and luminal vehicles collided in a chaotic dance, their paths skewed by the unseen force emanating from the blood wall. Metallic crunches and ethereal explosions painted the air, as the drivers lost control, their vehicles intertwining in a fiery embrace. Many spirits decided to use their ethereal forms and fly through the sky to avoid chaos, causing them to resemble scattered bugs fleeing the intrusion of light. Alas, their attempts were futile as the blood beam's speed was just too much for them. Meanwhile, Nebula, Salaphel, Ravager, Nidum, and other powerful fighters used whatever means necessary to escape the entanglement of the blood beam while making sure to save the people in their path. I will be right back. Even Felix returned back to the city after putting his servants numerous kilometers away from the capital. The moment he teleported inside, he scanned the area around him for a split second and then utilized his telekinesis control to pick up the slowest spirits. Then, he teleported them near the exterior wall of the capital. When they opened their eyes and saw themselves almost out of the city, they were left absolutely stunned. But, soon fear crawled back into their hearts and woke them up from their daze, forcing them to fly away from the city. There are way too numerous and my energy is limited. Felix said with a disgruntled tone, sweating from his forehead as he continued teleporting anyone in his path to safety. He could have not helped anyone, and if he wasn't a law enforcer, he would have honestly not offered his services at all. But, as cold and indifferent as he was, he still respected his duty as a law enforcer and carried on with saving as numerous citizens as possible. Alas, he was soon forced to give up and escape after the beam's expansion neared the capital's walls. With one last look, Felix teleported himself away. When he reappeared near Kura and Sekiro, he couldn't help but feel chills course down his spine at the scene before him. The Heavenly Plains capital, once a beacon of tranquility and ethereal beauty, was now ensnared in a crimson sphere, making it close to impossible to see within it. "Felix, are you okay?" Suddenly, Elder Kraken's erratic voice was heard in Felix's mind. "I am fine, I managed to teleport to the outside, what about you?" Felix asked. "I am still in the city." Elder Kraken shared, "I utilized my telekinesis barrier to shield my mansion and protect everyone from the beam. It seems resembling it's eating it away but in a slow fashion. I will teleport to you right away and take you guys out." Felix stated, "Just give me a moment to recover my energy." "No need, I think I will be able to hold on until Lord Hades makes his move." Elder Kraken uttered with a strange tone, "I have no idea how this happened under his supervision, but it won't last for long." "What is it though?" Felix frowned, "It can't be someone trying to kill us, right?" In his eyes, trying to kill spirits was a dumb idea on its own as there was no way they could be killed without Lord Hades' approval, only he was able to erase their existence. That's what he assumed, but he had no idea how wrong he was. In the profound silence of the netherworld, a shadowed sanctum surrounded by echoes of bygone epochs, Lord Hades sat in a meditative position. However, his mediation session was suddenly interrupted by a distant, yet profound tremor, a dissonance in the celestial harmony. His eyelids, heavy with the weight of eternal watchfulness, fluttered open. His gaze pierced the veils of existence, reaching into the heart of his capital city. Unlike Felix and the others, his vision was able to pierce through the veil of the red sphere, allowing him to see what was happening to his citizens. What he witnessed would send shivers down anyone's spine as almost all spirits imprisoned within the red sphere were lying on the ground without a single twitch. What was more shocking was the sight of their illumination being sapped out of their bodies, akin to candles on their last dying breath. Those with low illumination started releasing a dark aura around their bodies, an ominous aura, resembling the fallen specters greatly. "So, this is the method they have chosen," Lord Hades uttered expressionlessly, seemingly unconcerned by the sight. Instead of making a move to save his own citizen, he lifted his head and showed an indifferent look at the cosmos above. "If you had to go this far to weaken me and open a portal to my realm, you should have just sent a message." Lord Hades sneered, "I would have opened the gates and welcomed you with open arms." 1488 A Mortal's Defiance. Meanwhile, Duke Humphrey, enveloped by the crimson shadows of the forbidden array, lifted his hand in silent command. He knew that time wasn't his ally, so he straightaway began the second phase of the plan after ensuring that enough fallen spectres were created. By the authority vested in me by the Godfather, Duke Humphrey's voice resonated like distant thunder, echoing through the empty void of the spectral realm. I hereby command all fallen spectres across this realm to heed my call. It is time to cleanse this place of your wretched existence. As if compelled by an irresistible force, the fallen spectres across the entire realm stopped whatever they were doing and lifted their heads to the sky. Then, their bodies began to twist and writhe in anguish, their ghostly forms contorting as if struggling against an invisible tide. What the hell is wrong with you? Stop messing around! What's happening? Slavey? Are you good? The masters near their fallen servants were left utterly stunned and somewhat freaked out at the sight of dark tendrils of energy surging from their servants' ethereal bodies, coalescing into massive, swirling negative energy clouds that hung ominously in the air. Before they could react, Duke Humphrey's eyes glowed with an intensity that seemed to pierce the very souls of those gathered. Let the fallen embrace their fate, he declared, his voice resolute. Implode and release the darkness that clings to you, and in doing so, taint those nearby with your malevolence. Boo-hoo-hoo-hum, boo-hoo-hum, boo-hoo-hum. The fallen spectres obeyed and unleashed their pent-up negative energies through a massive implosion, causing the clouds of darkness to billow outward, sweeping across the spectral realm like a storm. The masters were the first to get hit by the dark clouds, causing them to transform into fallen spectres almost instantly before they could even utter a single scream. Just like a plague had been activated, they imploded on the spot as well and released similar dark clouds, enhancing the spread even further. Screams, shouts, and cries resounded in every city around the realm as the dark clouds kept engulfing other wandering spirits in their malevolent grasp. One by one, these hapless souls succumbed to the darkness, their forms twisted and contorted until they too became fallen spectres. This macabre cycle continued relentlessly, spiraling into a never-ending cascade of implosions and transformations. This can't be happening. Ravager was witnessing this horrific chain of implosions happening right in front of him in the capital city while he was flying in the direction of his house. His heart was thrown into the depth of despair as he watched the fallen spectres get erased from existence, not leaving even the spirit flame behind. Each implosion implied a confirmed death, and he refused to believe this for a simple reason: his little sister was still a fallen. Massia, Massia, please be safe, please be safe. He kept begging, wishing, and hoping as he rushed at his top speed across the city, not caring about his telekinesis barrier getting eaten rapidly. The moment he arrived at his house, he burst through the door and rushed to his little sister's room, where he last left her. Alas, the entire room was filled to the brim with dark energy, making it close to impossible to see one's own fingers. It can't be, not like this. Ravager mumbled with a petrified expression as he walked through the dark fog, step by step until he reached the bed. With a single stare, the wind picked up its pace and pushed the dark fog away from the bed, clearing his vision at last. What he found shattered his heart to pieces. A silver elegant ring was sitting on top of the sheets all by itself. This was the last piece of jewelry given to her by his parents, and she cherished it from a young age, not leaving her finger even when she turned into a fallen. He also had a similar one, as they were purchased as two items for the price of one when their family was poor. Overwhelmed by grief, Ravager floated to the bed and reached out to clasp the ring in his hand. As he held it, his tears flowed freely at last, shimmering like spectral dewdrops. He could feel the echoes of their past, the laughter and the warmth of their childhood. Why? Why? What did she ever do wrong to deserve this? Why? He sniffled silently as he hugged the ring. What did we do wrong to deserve this? All he had ever wanted was to live peacefully with his family, nothing more, nothing less, but the cutthroat rules in the heavenly plane shattered his dreams. Now, even when his parents were already kicked out and he could finally afford to live in peace with his little sister after working his ass off, she ended up dead anyways. A fate that shouldn't have happened in the spirit realm. As Ravager wept, a sinister force seemed to sense his vulnerability. The dark energy of his little sister surged forth, battering against the telekinetic barrier he had erected around himself. The barrier crackled and wavered as the malevolence clawed at it, hungry to consume him as it had his sister. Despite the danger, Ravager clung to the ring, his sobs echoing through the room. The tears he shed were not just for Marcia but for the countless souls who had met the same tragic unfair fate. As the dark energy continued to assail his barrier, Ravager's resolve to live seemed to have shattered. His heart was filled with pain and hatred towards no one but Lord Hades, even when he knew that all of this was related to the fallen spectre's organization. He lifted his head, his hazy eyes reddened akin to a demon, staring into the ceiling, seemingly wanting to stare directly into Lord Hades' eyes. Lord Hades! Ravager's voice echoed like thunder, reverberating through the eerie expanse of the fallen city. You, who are entrusted with the souls of the departed, have failed us all. His words were a searing accusation, a condemnation that cut through the oppressive silence. The screams of the terrified surviving spirits and the constant implosions happening around the city seemed to agree in response to his rage. You swore to protect us, to safeguard our souls from the darkness, Ravager continued, his voice quivering with a mix of sorrow and fury. Yet, under your rule, we were put in absolute misery, and now my little sister and countless others have been consumed by the very darkness you were meant to keep at bay. The dark fog around Ravager picked up, swirling around him as if amplifying his words. But in reality, it was taking advantage of his emotional instability to enhance its devouring process. But Ravager didn't seem to care that his telekinesis barrier was about to shatter and expose him to a similar fate. You sit upon your throne, your chains a symbol of your power, while we suffer and wither away. His voice cracked with unprocessed emotion. You are a betrayer of trust and a blight upon this realm. If you weren't going to protect and care for us, you should have left us as mindless wandering spirits. Why bother giving us poor spirits a taste of an afterlife, and then forcing us to fight for our stay every single day? Why bother to free us from the shackles of eternal peacefulness just to put us into a torturous life? Crack K. As his voice got louder and more powerful, he didn't seem to notice that his telekinesis barrier had shattered and his skin was in full contact with the dark energy. Without an ounce of mercy, the dark energy infested his body and began absorbing his illumination. Yet, Ravager wasn't even close to finishing his rant. What's the point? If you had any good faith, you should have created an actual heaven where spirits live in it without evil in their hearts, loving and caring for each other until eternity. Yet, you created a capitalistic hell-like society and called it a heavenly plane, not caring that more than 90% of spirits were barely living on a day-to-day basis. Ravager's chest heaved with anger and sorrow, but he knew that his words alone would not bring about the change he so desperately sought. He had uttered his defiance, his challenge to the ruler of the spectral realm, knowing that his words fell on deaf ears. In his eyes, Lord Hades didn't even know of his existence, and his entire rant was nothing but a mosquito buzz in the ears of a god. I am dying. As Ravager broke out of his tirade at last, he noticed that his entire body was on the verge of being consumed by the negative energy. He didn't know why, but he could sense his damnation fast approaching. Still, his grief-fueled rage burned hotter than the fear of death. In his final moments, he clung to his defiance and raised his darkened hand, fingers contorting into an unmistakable gesture, a middle finger. With a voice that seemed to shake the very foundations of the spectral realm, he bellowed, F***CKU, Hades. His words reverberated through the haunting stillness, a burning declaration of his resistance against the ruler of the underworld. His spectral eyes blazed with spite even as they faded into the abyss. As the last ignite disappeared from his heart, his soul exploded inward with a fiery burst of energy. Boom! The ring he was holding so dearly, flew into the ceiling and fell back on the bed, sitting right next to his own silver ring. In such moments, one would say, I hope they reunite in the afterlife and live a blissful life. Alas! Sigh. 1489 The punishment of the universe. Ravager and Massia were nothing but a drop in an ocean when it came to the casualties the entire heavenly realm sustained. The death toll soared into the millions, and the spectral realm grew heavy with despair. The universe itself shuddered, sensing the unholy ritual taking place. At last, Lord Hades felt the mounting anguish of the fallen spirits, causing him to make his move and save them. With newfound resolve, he rose from his mediation position and extended his arms outward. A brilliant light emanated from his hands, unlike any the spectral realm had ever witnessed. It was a celestial radiance, a manifestation of his dormant powers, harnessed now for the salvation of his realm. Everyone on the heavenly plane lifted their heads and watched as the blue sky became golden all of a sudden. Then, it started raining with mesmerizing divine droplets. No one was able to escape from the divine droplets as they went through anything in their way, stopping only when they touched the spirits. What's this? Felix narrowed his eyes as he watched his entire body get covered in divine light, feeling empowered and refreshed like he could take an entire army by himself. While it only gave him this feeling, the newly turned fallen specters, and other struggling spirits felt a profound transformation happening within them. The malevolent negative dark energy could no longer touch them. It was as though they were encased in a protective cocoon of radiant light, shielding them from the suffering that was about to befall them. It's the Lord's grace. He hasn't forsaken us. Praise the Lord! Praise the Lord! Run outside of the city while you are still under the Lord's protection. With their newfound immunity to the negative energy, the protected spirits began to flee their cities, seeking refuge far from the malevolent dark clouds. They moved with urgency, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the chaos. Honestly, they didn't even need to do that as the divine droplets were also erasing the spreading of negative energy in all cities. Even the red sphere around the capital had its powers wane over time, seemingly about to disappear at any given moment. Tisk, he sure managed to restore order quite fast. In the distance, Duke Humphrey showed an irritated expression as he watched his efforts of more than 6 decades fade away in less than a minute. It doesn't matter, the death toll is enough for the universe to punish him. Duke Humphrey smiled coldly. The universe, ever watchful and unforgiving, had taken notice of the grave injustice that had unfolded under Lord Hades' rule. The cosmic balance, a force as ancient as time itself, stirred with righteous fury. The universe had no consciousness and didn't understand that punishing Lord Hades, it would make things worse for the spirits. All it cared about was right and wrong. The fact that a few million spirits were erased from existence under Lord Hades' rulership warranted a strict punishment. As the ruler of the spectral realm reclined back, his form shrouded in an eerie darkness, he suddenly felt a searing pain coursing through him. It's starting, he thought expressionlessly. It began as an uncomfortable tingling sensation, like the prickling of 1,000 needles, spreading across his spectral flesh. When he looked down, he noticed tendrils of brilliant light emerging from his skin. They resembled chains of cosmic energy, radiant and pulsating with ethereal power. They wrapped themselves around his form, tightening with a merciless force that defied his control. These chains were not mere symbols of imprisonment but the embodiment of divine retribution. All unigens were born with them as they were the constraints placed upon them by the universe, used to keep them in order and line. Since the ruler of the spectral realm didn't abuse his powers, but failed one of his duties, which was guarding the souls and spirits against erasure, his punishment was physical pain instead of forcing him into slumber. Even the demigods felt pain when it came to the universal punishments as the chains coiled around him like serpents, their grip unrelenting, and he could feel their luminous energy seeping into his very being, scorching his flesh. The pain was excruciating, unlike anything the ruler of the spectral realm had ever endured. Yet, he neither screamed nor showed a different expression. The chains continued to tighten, sapping his strength and power with each passing moment, and Lord Hades knew that this would last for a couple of millions of years, corresponding each spirit's death with 1 year of his immortal life. When it came to demigods' punishments, the universe was an absolute merciless menace. Meanwhile, in the heart of the eternal celestial kingdom, one of many majestic palaces rose, its spires piercing the heavens. Its architecture was a masterpiece of divine craftsmanship, adorned with intricate, celestial motifs that seemed to dance and shimmer in response to the kingdom's vibrant energy. Within the palace, the Godfather himself, seated upon a twisted throne of fire and magma, wore an imposing cloak that seemed to absorb the very light around it. He was robust and muscular, with a sturdy frame that spoke of immense strength. His body was marked by scars and burn marks, seemingly glorifying the wounds his laws could cause to his enemies. His skin was a rugged, weathered texture, as if it has been forged by the very fires he commanded, bearing a reddish or bronzed hue, reminiscent of smoldering embers and cooled lava. His eyes gleamed with an inner fire, often appearing as deep, fiery orbs that seemed to smolder with an otherworldly intensity. This was the Godfather of fire and magma, the one and only Unigen with the powers to command those two laws and anything related to them. At the moment, his eyes were reflecting a hazy images that resembled the heavenly plane. That old coot has finally been weakened and his seal over his realm started to give in. He showed an icy smile as he stood up from his throne. It's time to show my worth to the upper celestials and earn my rightful spot amongst them. With a single step forward, he disappeared from the throne room and appeared at an everlasting expanse of mesmerizing green fields. Those fields weren't empty at all as they were packed to the brim with armies upon armies of celestial illuminating humanoid figures. They resembled men and women, but their divine complexion and feet hardly large wings behind their backs set them apart from any other race. Even high elves paled in comparison to those beings' elegance and nobility, seemingly screaming of superiority without uttering a single word. Yet, when everyone saw their Godfather appear above them, they kneeled with their heads touching the ground, dirting their foreheads and clothes. They all shouted simultaneously with a tone filled with unquestionable reverence and worship. Praise the Godfather Hephaestus! Godfather Hephaestus' eyes gleamed with evil intent as he stood before his forces. Your sole purpose in life has arrived, do not disappoint me, he said, indifferent as ever. Then, he turned around and with a gesture of his hand, a rift began to tear open in the fabric of the eternal celestial kingdom. It crackled with fiery energy, expanding into a massive portal that connected their realm to the heavenly plane. The very sky above them darkened as the portal grew, an ominous gateway between realms. This sight wasn't appearing just for them, but also for everyone in the heavenly plane. Felix, Elder Kraken, Nidum, Captain Charleston, Mr. Atticus, Boss Alives, Inspector Nolver, and even Duke Humphrey. All of them were seen staring at the sky above with eyes showing different emotions. Most were left absolutely stunned and confused, but some of them showed looks of absolute excitement and fervor. Ha ha ha! I am going back! I am going back at last! Duke Humphrey laughed at the top of his lung akin to a madman at the sight of the Godfather's forces descending from the sky. Thousands upon thousands of divine angels rushed from the portal and into the heavenly plane, their wings stretched far open, and their bright light casting an illumination as strong as the fake sun high above. When the netizens saw those angels, none of them felt an ounce of threat or fear, in fact, they kept staring at them with widened eyes in awe and astonishment. Alas, those looks didn't last for long as the moment those angels reached the capital city below them, they didn't hesitate to expand their hands forward and release divine scorching light from their palms, destroying absolutely anything in the path, spirits included. Is this really happening? Felix's heartbeats started increasing in agitation as his eyes were affixed on the demonic angels, hunting down anything in sight, while more and more of them kept pouring from the portal high above. He didn't need to guess as he was certain that portal was connected to the kingdom of those beings, the beings who were responsible for sending him down here. 1490 turning his back on his squad. Felix, this looks more serious than I thought. Elder Kraken said with a solemn tone, I have never imagined the people of the Eternal Kingdom would invade the spirit realm. It's really them. Felix's expression turned cold all of a sudden, don't tell me they are coming after us now. There is a possibility, but I believe this is more related to Lord Hades than her. Elder Kraken shared, Lord Hades has locked the gates of the spirit realm to the eternal kingdom for some reason, so all of their dead spirits remain in their kingdom and the residents there aren't so loving of the idea. Felix was left startled by the information as he hadn't expected such hostility between the eternal kingdom and Lord Hades. The fact that Lord Hades dared to lock the spirit realm from the eternal kingdom was even more shocking, especially when Felix knew that the eternal kingdom was the home of all Unigens and those monstrous beings. Isn't doing that means starting a war with all Unigens? What pushed him to take such a decision? Felix asked. Who knows? It's not like he shares with us the woes of his home. Elder Kraken warned, don't waste your time on such useless nonsense, run as far as possible from the capital. I am certain a Unigen or even a couple are going to come down he. Rumbly. Before he could finish his sentence, the entire heavenly plane seemed to have been hit by a massive earthquake, causing almost everyone to hug the ground. Even when the ground shook, no one bothered to look at it. Instead, they all lifted their heads the instant they felt a monstrous overbearing pressure falling on their shoulders. What they saw caused almost 30% of the spirits to pass out, 30% to lose complete control over their bladder in fear, and the remaining spirits to remain frozen on the spot with widened eyes. It was Hephaestus emerging from the portal with a towering colossal height of several kilometers, resembling a living volcano. His molten form radiating intense heat and his eyes blazing with fiery malevolence, his entire presence screamed of a holy deity who shouldn't even be looked at directly. Felix and many others were punished almost instantly for their disrespectful transgression as their eyes were scorched from the inside out. Arg! Agur! My eyes! Many spirits dropped to the ground with their hands grasping their flaming eyes tightly in absolute agony. Meanwhile, Felix and other experienced fighters swiftly used their telekinesis control to isolate the fire from their eyes, protecting whatever was left of them. With great difficulty, Felix opened his eyes again and this time, he didn't dare stare at Godfather Hephaestus. Panic rippled through the entire city as no one had seen or interacted with an actual Unigen this up close. Even Felix's encounter with Unigens was through Asna and Nimmo. Both of them could be uttered to have never given him the real experience of dealing with a Unigen due to their weakened strength and relationship with him. Suddenly, before Godfather Hephaestus could utter a single word or unleash his fiery wrath upon the heavenly plane, a rift in the fabric of reality opened before him. From this rift, Lord Hades, dragging his radiant chains of cosmic punishment, manifested in all his spectral glory. Let's take this somewhere else. Lord Hades said, his overbearing tone resounding akin to thunder across the heavenly plane. Those chains sure suit a traitor like you. Godfather Hephaestus sneered. Looks like those old geezers have managed to convince you that not accepting their rules and leadership is a traitorous act. Lord Hades replied calmly, how shameful, a Unigen needing structure, rules, and hierarchy like mortals. The only thing shameful here is you, still carrying with your own universal duties for a master that will never appear again. Godfather Hephaestus retorted. At least, I am free. Without wasting any more time in talking to him, Lord Hades reached out and a rift opened beneath Godfather Hephaestus's colossal form. In an instant, both godlike beings were engulfed by the rift, disappearing from the heavenly plane under everyone's stunned expressions. Before the silence could last for even a moment, it was broken down by the Angels' army restarting their destruction more brutally than ever. Protect the citizens! High Inspector Charlson shouted with a strict expression, seemingly trying his very best to keep his cool in this bizarre and f***ed up situation. At the moment, all he knew was that the heavenly plane was under attack and the citizens were being assaulted. As a law enforcer, it was his duty to defend them with his life. Felix, Nebula, Salaphel, Nidum, and all the law enforcers outside of the city heard their new inspector's order. Besides Felix, the others all charged back into the city, which was now without a red sphere covering it, but under the attacks of a much scarier danger. Fortunately, Lord Hades' blessings from before had yet to run out and many spirits were saved from instant death because of it. Meanwhile, throughout this whole situation, Felix only managed to reach out to one conclusion. A chance to reunite with Isna. Albeit cold-hearted and ruthless, Felix turned his back on the call and sought to meet up with his loved one. He realized that Lord Hades would not be bothered to look at him when he clearly had a much bigger problem to handle. This meant he would not have any other chance like this ever again if he dared miss it. However, just as he was about to reach out to Elder Kraken and ask him about Isna's location, he heard the echoes of children's wails, women's screams, and men's pained groans. The echoes were distant, but the vibrations made them crystal clear to his ears. "What am I doing?" he asked while staring at his reflection on his device screen. His face was indifferent, emotionless, and downright scary. He never bothered to care about how he looked like, but now? He felt like he was staring at a monster he couldn't recognize. Was I really going to ditch my own duty and turn my back on my squad for the sake of my own personal benefit? Was I really going to stoop that low? Felix knew himself to not be a white knight, a hero in shining armor who would jump at any danger for the sake of strangers. He wasn't like that and he had no plans to be one. But, he wasn't a lowlife who would ignore his job's duty, his captain's orders, and his squad mates' plight for the sake of his desires. What would his masters think of him if they heard about this? What would Isna see of him if she learned that he threw away everything that defied his character for the sake of meeting her? Would she still admire and cherish him? All Felix knew at the moment was he would not admire himself anymore if he dared turn his back on everyone who was there for him. So, without an ounce of hesitation, Felix put back his device inside his pocket and narrowed his cold-blooded eyes on the flying angels above the city, shouting down beams on the ground like they were playing a wreck-a-mole game. "Let's clean this as quickly as possible before Lord Hades deals with his matters." While Felix didn't want to turn his back on his squad, it didn't mean that he planned on wasting this unique chance fighting those angels. So, he planned on going absolutely all out. 1491 Angels dropping down akin to flies. Felix took a deep breath and extended his arm forward. He closed his eyes and imagined the creation of a powerful crystallized sniper rifle made out of adamantine gemstone. Since he had mastered this ability and understood exactly how it worked, his imagination bore to fruition. The crystallized sniper rifle manifested on his arm, shimmering with a blinding light akin to a beacon. Felix wasn't done. He snapped his finger and purplish deadly liquid bullets were created in bulks before turning into hardened bullets. He picked them up and loaded them inside the magazine while his right eye was placed on the scope, which was merely a small open hole. His eye reflected a zoomed-up scene of a flying squad of angels, terrorizing 3 law enforcers who were putting their lives on the line to protect a house filled with refugees. "It's been a while," Felix said while caressing the smooth surface of the rifle. His hand kept moving down until his fingers landed on the trigger. Zzzzzzzzzzz. The moment they touched the trigger, tens of electric lighting rings manifested on the long barrel of the sniper rifle. Now, the weapon was fully ready to devour anyone. Still, Felix didn't fire. "I never had the opportunity to use this technique in the living world against live targets." Felix smiled coldly as he eyed the angels. "Consider it your misfortune." His eyes suddenly turned white, showing a bright detailed runic hexagon on his pupils. The moment it finished its creation, the electric lighting rings seemed to sizzle at 10 times the usual speed. Felix applied none other than a time acceleration spell on the lightning rings, causing them to add even more explosive speed to the bullets. He had tested this once in training and the result left his jaw wide open, and now it was time to be unleashed for real. Felix's heart beat in rhythm with his measured breaths. With unparalleled focus, he finally squeezed the trigger. The crystallized sniper rifle responded with a near-silent whisper, and the true poison bullet erupted from its barrel with supernatural speed, leaving a trail of shimmering essence in its wake. The bullet sailed through the heavenly realm's boundless expanse, a streak of iridescent doom hurtling toward its target. The celestial angel, graceful and unsuspecting, continued shouting divine beams at the law enforcers, who were barely resisting the onslaught. If it wasn't for Lord Hades' blessings from before, their life would have ended much sooner. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the true poison bullet found its mark. It struck the angel with pinpoint accuracy, a flash of maleficent brilliance against the celestial canvas. The angel didn't even seem to have felt anything as the bullet was so fast it penetrated right through his chest and continued its journey before landing on another angel many kilometers further than the first one. Get rid of them quickly, we have plenty of cities to cover. We are trying, but it's mad annoying with Lord Hades' blessings protecting them. Try hard, arg. Ka thumb. The first angel felt his heart tightening up on him like it was being gripped by the Grim Reaper's hand. His face contorted in utter agony as the venom seeped into his entire being in less than a second. Arg! Arg! Alas, the true pain had arrived a tad later after his soul got poisoned too, leaving him incapable of mustering a single thought. All he could do was scream and bellow akin to a wounded dog in front of his squad's shocked expressions. What in the Lord's name? They muttered with chills coursing down their spine at the horrifying sight of their partner's once illuminated wings dimming and its feathers turning black and falling into the ground like he caught a deadly plague. Yet, what scared them the most was his brilliant faint skin turning purple with blackened spots appearing across his entire body. Ugh! With one last soft whimper, the sunken boneless angel fell to the ground and melted down, leaving behind him nothing but blackened brittle bones. Both the angels and the law enforcers near the angel took a step back reflexively while holding their breaths in terror. None of them had ever seen such an instant and gruesome death before, and it made them fearful to have the same fate befall them. While the law enforcers were blessed to have Felix on their side, the same couldn't be the same for the poor angels. Arg! Ugh! It hurts. Before they could even react, they got taken out by the next barrage of bullets as Felix kept firing non-stop until he emptied the magazine. Then, he racked a new one and continued his killing spree, causing the celestial angels, in their agonized descent, to resemble plummeting fragile bugs, with their wings unable to bear them any longer. Someone is taking down the angels. Who is it? Inspector Charlson shouted in the intercom after noticing the sky getting cleaned off those heavenly bullies. It's not us. We got help too. Likewise. They were fighting us and suddenly collapsed into disgusting pools. It must be poisonous arrows or something. But, how can poison causes such freakish damage? Plenty of law enforcers responded to the question, but none of them lied to take the credit. When Inspector Charlson saw that no one came forward, he didn't know whether it was an enforcer's doing or a powerful citizen offering his help. Whatever it was, he wasn't complaining in the slightest. 10, 20, 50, 100, 200. As the number of fatalities began to climb higher and higher while the sky seemed less populated than before, the Angels Battalion commander was finally notified. Commander Nottingham. Someone is slaying our forces at a rapid rate and we have yet to locate him. An angel reported, his voice seemingly trembling a little. He had witnessed his close partner melting right in front of him and he couldn't save him even when he used divine healing, which was powerful enough to heal any wound. How many casualties have we suffered? Commander Nottingham asked composedly. He was a figure of unwavering authority and discipline, presiding over the celestial angelic forces with an iron will. His countenance was marked by a stern visage, and his eyes bore the weight of countless responsibilities. His position within the Eternal Kingdom seemed quite decent as even Duke Humphrey and his organization's 5 heads didn't dare to act brazen in his presence. It has crossed 200 and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. 200 angels killed in less than 10 minutes without the assailant being spotted. Duke Humphrey frowned. Impossible, no one in the city is potent enough to pull this off without us knowing about him. All powerful high-level law enforcers have their positions marked and accounted for, so it can't be them. Sharkey suggested, it must be an outsider. Sharkey and Nolver were freed from the prison the moment the red sphere covered the entire city. At that point, no one was in his right mind to protect the jail when the citizens were getting blown into dark clouds. Even though they weren't informed of Duke Humphrey's plan, they were prepared for anything to happen. In this manner, they managed to not turn into fallen specters and survived with their telekinesis barrier until the portal opened up. What do you suggest, then? Commander Nottingham asked with an indifferent look. Leave it to us, we will handle this outsider. Duke Humphrey uttered coldly, you guys just focus on keeping the residents terrorized. The more spirits die, the weaker Lord Hades will be and give our godfather an advantage in their battle. Don't take too long. Commander Nottingham waved his hand, agreeing to their plan. Let's go. Duke Humphrey turned around and flew back to the city with the 5 heads closely behind him and many other lower-ranked subordinates like Boss Alves, Quillen, and such. Right now, Boss Alves resembled a feather under the mercy of the wind. He knew that it was already too late to change sides and receive Lord Hades' grace, as this was nothing but a betrayal of the highest order. So, he stuck close by to Duke Humphrey's side, understanding that they must have plans to survive, as no one was stupid enough to start a war with a god and not have an escape plan. What did I get myself into? I just wanted to earn Loomis. He thought with a bitter look, wanting to cry but having no tears to shed. Meanwhile, many kilometers outside of the capital, Kara could be seen wiping Felix's sweaty forehead with a napkin while he was shooting down angels non-stop. Sekiro, Miss Sani, and little Timmy, who had just arrived, were responsible for covering for him, so he could focus completely on his attacks. Felix had given them his location the moment he left the city, knowing that Vixen would never die in such a manner. This is already his 278 confirmed kill, yet, he shows no signs of stopping. Sekiro muttered while standing next to Miss Sani. The more, the merrier. Miss Sani grinned, I can see ourselves getting rich and having our status rise after Lord Hades shuts down this war. Is all you think about is money? Sekiro rolled his eyes and stopped wasting his time on her. To be honest, Miss Sani was merely putting up a front. In reality, deep down, she started to believe that Felix wasn't like any other spirit. Sekiro and even Kara were feeling the same. Felix always gave them a strange feeling before, but as they watched him exterminate angels back and forth like some second-rated mobsters, they were more certain than ever that he wasn't like them. It was simply impossible for a spirit to grow this potent in less than a year, even if he hit the absolute jackpot in traits, simply impossible. But, they didn't bring this matter to his attention as they didn't want him to lose his concentration. In their minds, they believed that Felix trusted them with his secret, but in reality, he simply didn't care anymore about hiding his true powers. In his eyes, he would leave permanently the moment he took care of the angels. 1492 Taking the fight to the city. Meanwhile, in a majestic palace high above in the sky, tens of thousands of kilometers away from the capital city, Asna stood on the balcony of her bedroom, her heart pounding like the fierce drumming of a storm in her chest. Her glittering amber eyes were affixed on the tiny spatial whirlwind high above in the sky. She might not have seen everything due to the long distance, but she had witnessed the invasion of Godfather Hephaestus and his angelic army. Although she could not see through the portal, her eyes seemed to reflect the memories she experienced in that sinister place, causing her trauma to resurface. Her hands trembled as she clutched into the balcony railing, trying her best to ease her agitated emotions. Even when her trauma of imprisonment was awakened, her mind was consumed by Felix and Felix alone. Is he okay? Did they hurt him? Don't tell me they caught him. When she thought about how Felix was put in danger by her own kind again, she couldn't accept it, not even a little. Her agitated core started to burn in rage the more she imagined Felix getting harmed by them. None of you F***ers are going to touch him again. When her rage reached its peak, she cursed hatefully as she jumped out of the balcony and flew in the direction of the capital city, fighting against all of her instincts. Lord Hades didn't lock Asna in her palace and gave her freedom to leave and roam wherever she wanted. The only reason Asna never left the palace was because she knew that his eyes would be on her. If she dared to obtain close to Felix, his eyes would be on him. In turn, it would cause him to find out that his memories were restored and screw Felix all over. So, for his sake, she stayed put in her bedroom, but no more. Meanwhile, back in the city, Duke Humphrey and his subordinates were spread around the city to increase their odds of locating Felix. Thud. Thud. Suddenly, Sharky was forced to move to the side after two angels landed on the ruined building next to him akin to cannonballs. As he watched them melt into disgusting liquid, his face couldn't help but twist under its mask. As an active criminal, he didn't want to attract law enforcers' interest to him. How are they doing it? I was watching them closely, and they dropped dead without warning. Duke Humphrey ordered them to pick targets and keep their eyes on them so that when they got attacked, they could easily trail back to the source. Alas, even when with his peak concentration, he witnessed absolutely nothing. **T, if we weren't in the spirit realm I would have believed it to be a ghost. Sharky cursed while sprinting to the other angels. Anything? Judge Marcel inquired. Nothing here. I witnessed two angels die in front of me and still found no trace. Sharky informed, is this really the right strategy? Same happened here. After Duke Humphrey heard their claims, he knitted his eyebrows in displeasure. He realized that the opponent they were dealing with wasn't so simple, and this didn't please him one bit. He had accounted for so many things for the sake of returning to his home. He wasn't going to let a random variable ruin his efforts. The only angels dying are the ones in the sky. Duke Humphrey narrowed his eyes, analyzing the situation with the few intel in his possession. The assailant is never near them and he can even kill multiple ones from different areas at the same time. This could only mean that he is either high above or outside of the city walls firing invisible projectiles. This was the only logical conclusion in his mind. To test it out, he reached out to Commander Nottingham and requested he order his army to fight below the city walls. Commander Nottingham did as he was told after realizing that his soldiers' deaths weren't slowing down at all. The moment the angels received the order, the sky was cleared off them, leaving only rising smoke and ruined skyscrapers in sight. It's about time they catch on. Felix retracted his eye from the scope after his targets disappeared, seemingly not too bothered by it. Damn it, looks like they figured you out. Sekiro frowned as he pulled a katana from his sheath. What now? Should we rush them? Sekiro might not seem like it, but he was a decent swordsman who could take care of himself against regular foes. Unfortunately, those angels were no regular enemies and if he dared step inside the city, he knew deep down that he would obtain eliminated instantly. Still, he wasn't a coward to stay back and watch his master go in alone. Luckily for him, Felix had no interest in bringing extra baggage with him. I am going in, stay here and protect them. Felix ordered while cancelling out the sniper rifle. IWA. With one indifferent stare from Felix, Sekiro was forced to lower his head and reply, I understand. Master, do you really have to go in? Kara asked with a worried tone as she held onto his shirt, there are thousands of them. Felix patted her on the head for a moment before saying, I am afraid it's my duty. There was no one more wanting to leave this place than him at the moment. Alas, he could not turn his back on his responsibilities. Before they could say anything, Felix took a step forward and disappeared out of sight, teleporting back to the city. How mysterious! Miss Sanny's eyes tingled with untold curiosity as she witnessed Felix use a spatial ability, another element that was impossible to master in less than decades even for geniuses. Too bad, no one was there to ease her curiosity. Arg! Mommy, leave me alone, please. Lord Hades save us. Boom. Boom. The moment Felix opened his eyes, he witnessed a scene like no other, a scene a child would never be able to imagine as it went against all of his fairy tale beliefs. Angelic divine beings were hunting down helpless and defenseless spirits, scorching them to death or cutting them into pieces with their glowing Excalibur-like swords. Lord Hades' protection was temporary and it had served its purpose already, leaving those poor spirits to rely only on the law enforcer's protection. Alas, there was far too little of them and far too many angels, plus, the difference in strength was absolutely maddening. Felix had just witnessed a single angel killing off 4 law enforcers with a single swing of his sword, releasing a divine scorching blade in their direction. Their telekinesis barrier shattered almost instantly. Just because Felix was capable of killing them off easily, it didn't mean that they were weak. It was just Felix's overpowered abilities were simply unmatched. Looks like I have to do a bit more work than I thought. Felix sighed as he strolled towards the mentioned angel, not bothering to even hide his face. How brave, walking to your own death after witnessing what happened to your colleagues. The angel showed a stern expression as he proclaimed, your courage and bravery have earned my respect, I shall award you with a panel. Slice. In one fluid motion, Felix had sliced the angel from the torso with a glowing spatial blade, appearing behind him in the blink of an eye after casting a time acceleration spell on himself. Death. By the time the angel finished his sentence, his body separated right from the center, releasing a fountain of glittering blood into the air. His brain couldn't even fathom how he died before he died. How noisy, do they think we comprehend them? Felix said with an indifferent tone as his hawk-like eyes began scanning the area around him. 1493 Harbinger of Destruction. The moment he found the biggest cluster of angels nearby, he teleported right amidst them, causing them to focus on him immediately. Without any words exchanged, they attacked him with the same scorching divine beams, surrounding him with more than 5 beams in all directions. Felix glanced at the approaching beams and manifested 5 basic gemstones. Then, he uttered, dimensional imprisonment, time dilution. His pupils glowed with 2 new runic hexagons before an invisible sphere emerged from his body and expanded until the beams and angels were included. The angels' eyelids seemed to slowly rise in the air in shock at the sight of their beams moving at less than 1% of their speed in the direction of Felix. Let's see if you guys are immune to your own attacks. Instead of killing them right away, Felix decided to run some experiments on them as it wasn't a normal occurrence to run into Eternal Kingdom's citizens. Spatial displacement. He activated another spell and then watched as those 5 angels got their positions instantly shambled with the 5 gemstones. Since the gemstones were grouped together, the angels ended up mushed up into a ball of flesh and limbs, resembling a rat king one. Before their minds could even process this witchcraft they were under, Felix cancelled the time dilution spell, and the 5 divine golden beams struck the armored angels into a single point. Boredom. Arg. Ugh. While Felix could not understand their language, the screams of pain were universal for every creature. Interesting, they get affected just as difficult as us. Felix analyzed as he watched them melt into a single mesh of flesh and blood while bellowing their eyes out. After the beams died off, the 5 angels were nowhere to be seen, leaving behind them pieces of their armor, and bones falling into the ground. Are they using borrowed powers? It seems too powerful, too divine for them. Felix wondered. The damage those divine beams were just too terrifying as they could raise the entire ground up and collapse buildings like they were made out of paper. Felix was already accustomed to light element abilities and those divine golden abilities were nothing like them. Captain! We found a powerful enemy. We need reinforcement. A white-haired angel with a metallic helmet on reported with a serious tone after watching his companions getting obliterated by Felix. Before he could even attempt to provide assistance, his people were already erased from existence. Do not engage, reinforcement is on the way. I will keep an eye on H. Hey? Where did he go? The white-haired angel looked back and forth with bewildered expression after losing his sight of Felix. He literally blinked once and that was all it took for him to lose Felix. I have los. Before he could report it, a poisonous true bullet accelerated with time penetrated the back of his helmet and came out of his forehead. Thud. From a distance behind him, Felix was seen putting a tiny crystallized handgun in his pocket, before continuing his sprint to another location. I have to save as much spiritual energy as possible. The energy restoration treasures in my possessions aren't enough to last me forever. Felix narrowed his eyes, understanding that he had to be efficient in his killings. And so, in the heart of the capital city, Felix moved with an unsettling grace, a harbinger of destruction, using all sorts of abilities and techniques from an arsenal of more than 10 elements. As Felix continued his rampage, he conjured a swirling maelstrom of true poison fog. It billowed through the streets, an insidious cloud that clung to the wings of angels and seeped into their every pore. Their once pure forms withered and twisted, their ethereal beauty devoured by the toxic haze, their cries for mercy were silenced by the suffocating embrace of the poison fog. He made sure that the streets were empty of innocent citizens before using weapons of mass destruction. If it wasn't for the citizens being hidden under the rubble or underground, he would have used his condensed nukes and razed entire kilometers of surface area at once. While he was going berserk mode, the mess he was creating hadn't gone unnoticed and the news reached the commander and Duke Humphrey. "Pull your people away from the southern district, I will handle him," Duke Humphrey requested from the commander while speeding away to the southern district. The closest one to Felix was Nolver, and he has been following the noise ever since he started his mayhem. At last, he managed to reach Felix when he was just about to engage against a retreating squad of angels. "Hey? Are you sting me?" When he saw that it was Felix, the bastard who was causing them trouble for the entire year, he couldn't believe his eyes at all. Soon, his disbelief and shock were turned to utter horror at the sight of those fleeing angels getting severed into pieces by spatial blades. What terrified him the most was the fact that those angels seemed to have paused in midair, not moving an inch even when the spatial blades cut them off. This can't be real. Space? Time? Isn't he a sound elementalist? The more he tried to understand the scene before him, the less it made sense. Alas, he was staring a bit too hard, which activated Felix's senses and made him turn around and spot him hidden behind a falling building. The moment Nolver's eyes met Felix's, he felt his entire soul freeze on him, even his legs turned a bit wobbly, like a prey spotting its primal predator. Before he could break out of his daze, Felix appeared right in front of him with a faint cold smile. "How are you doing, High Inspector? Who are you? You can't be a mere newbie spirit. Are you a spy of Godfather Poseidon? Sent to ruin our Godfather's plans?" Scared sh*+, Nolver stuttered a series of questions as he stepped away from Felix. He wanted to muster his courage and stand up before Felix, but the gallons of blood tainting Felix's entire body were enough to scare anyone to death. "Godfather Poseidon? What are you on about?" Felix frowned in confusion. "You really don't know?" Nolver seemed to believe Felix's ignorance about their celestial matters. He was working as a high inspector for a very long time and this made him detect lies from truth easily. But how? How can you be this powerful and utilize so many elements in such a short time? How? Wait a second. Nolver's eyes widened in shock as he asked, "Have you maintained your memo, Arg? You are talking too much." Felix broke his knee with a single kick in the joint, causing Nolver to start crying immediately. One would think that he was weak or soft, and he would be completely right. Ever since Nolver became an inspector, he never fought a single time and dirted his own hands. Even when he was quite a reputable fighter in his time, all he was now was a shadow of his former self, and a mere broken knee was enough to leave him with teary eyes. "Don't die on me now, I still need you to explain this mess." Felix leaned closer to his face and asked point blank, "What's your purpose of this invasion and what's your relation to the Eternal Kingdom? If you want the answers to those questions, I am your man." Suddenly, a disgruntled cold voice resounded deeply in Felix's ear, making his skin jolt out of place. Just as he wanted to teleport away randomly, a brilliant golden fist landed square on his left cheek, shattering his telekinesis barrier instantly. Whoosh! Boom! Felix flew akin to a cannonball into the ruined buildings, breaking walls upon walls before finally coming to a halt near a broken chandelier. Cough! Cough! With bloodshot dizzy eyes, Felix coughed out buckets of blood mixed in with a few shattered teeth. It had been a long, Long time since Felix had gotten punched the absolute wind out of him like this, leaving him completely disoriented. You have been messing with my plans for a long while now. So, you better stand up, I am not done with you yet. Duke Humphrey appeared above him with an icy look etched on his face, his hands clasped behind his back and one of them was dripping with Felix's blood. It was clear, he meant business. A rat king is a collection of rats whose tails are intertwined and bound together in some way. This may be a result of an entangling material like hair, a sticky substance such as sap or gum, or the tails being tied together. 1494 Duke Humphrey vs Felix. Felix fought against the numbness his body was under and stood up straight. He wiped the blood out of his lips and said coldly, "So, it was you. How is Kara doing?" Duke Humphrey confessed emotionlessly, "She has been a great help in my experiment to create the negativity fuelers. The things I did to her, the things she had to go through to help me extract her negative energy, phew." Duke Humphrey's smile grew a bit wide as he saw Felix's face turn issier and issier. "I am honestly astounded she managed to keep her sanity straight." "Shut it. If she didn't escape when my guard was lowered, she would have been one of the best negativity fuelers." "I said shut it," Felix repeated, his voice almost sounding like an animal growl, his bloodshot murderous eyes made him resemble one. "Or what?" Duke Humphrey sneered as he used his overpowered telekinesis control to gain a tight hold on Felix, making it close to impossible for him to even bat an eye. "You thought the bits of spiritual treasures you consumed made you a god around here?" Duke Humphrey mocked as he tightened his grip even further, causing Felix's bones to crack loud and clear. "I have consumed tens of millions worth of spiritual treasures to elevate my strength to its peak, so I could handle any trash that stands before me in my way back home." Felix knew that he wasn't bullshitting him in the slightest. His telekinesis grip was so powerful, that it made him feel utterly hopeless. While Felix had many powerful abilities, he really couldn't use them even if he wanted to. For example, totality collapse, illusion domain, and such were some of the highest and most complex powers to master in the universe. Even if he used his imagination, he had absolutely no clue how they worked, which meant he could not rely on them at all. The only powers he could use were the ones he spent time learning and mastering, allowing his imagination to have substance to it. Fortunately, there was an advanced ability that was powerful enough to be considered close to an ultimate ability. Felix knew that it was his only hope to free himself. Without an ounce of hesitation, Felix used concept destruction mist and marked Duke Humphrey's telekinesis energy. The crimson-red mist emerged from Felix akin to a subduing tinger awoken from a deep slumber, engulfing him entirely. Duke Humphrey frowned in confusion as he felt like his telekinesis energy was being eaten by the crimson mist. "This can't be." Refusing to believe it, Duke Humphrey's eyes blazed with determination as he extended his hand, attempting to exert his telekinetic dominance over Felix. But the concept destruction mist held strong, devouring the waves of telekinetic vitality and causing them to dissipate harmlessly into the mist's abyssal depths. Felix, a cruel smile playing on his lips, broke free from his grasp and landed on his knees. Even when half of his body's bones were broken or on the verge of shattering, he still refused to lie on the ground. "What have you done?" Duke Humphrey asked with a solemn tone as he retreated a step back, feeling his danger instincts tingling at the sight of his enemy seemingly set in crimson flames. Did the Duke just retreat? Nolver's eyes widened in shock. He heard too much about the Duke's legends in the Eternal Kingdom and his upbearing to reach his current position to see him retreat before a nobody. This made him realize that Felix was even more terrifying than he initially assumed. **T, this is too much for me. Nolver wanted dearly to leave this area, but he didn't dare ditch the Duke. You will know later on. With a deep, controlled breath, Felix summoned his water-sacred healing ability, a power rarely seen in his arsenal. Concentrating his will, Felix channeled the sacred water's essence within him. A gentle, luminescent glow enveloped his physique as the healing energies flowed through his veins. The water's soothing touch mended his shattered bones and closed his grievous wounds, knitting his flesh back together at an insane rate. In merely a couple of seconds, Felix's skin exhilarated all the filth and bad blood resulting from his wounds, leaving him in relief from the agony that had plagued him moments before. Felix almost never used water to heal himself, even though it possessed one of the best healing properties in all elements. That's because of his insane rejuvenation from Elder Kraken's bloodline. But now, he had no mutation from his previous life, so he had to rely on all of his elemental arsenal. Duke. This bastard is a strange one. I saw him use space and time abilities. He was killing most angels with poison, and we know he can use fire and sound elements. Now, he even controls water and whatever that crimson mist. Nolver shared with a concerned tone. He can't master all of those elements in less than a year. I am afraid, he isn't a normal spirit. Even without Nolver saying this, Duke Humphrey reached the same conclusion after finally guessing the origin of the crimson mist. Destruction element, how did he learn it? It can't be from here. Duke Humphrey narrowed his eyes at Felix before asking him, have you retained your memories? Did that irritating B*TCH help you somehow with it? Duke Humphrey was there when Asna and Felix were brought together at the council. He saw how Lord Hades severed their souls and sent them on their merry ways. While it was impossible for other spirits to maintain or recover their memories, he could see it happening with Felix since Asna shared both of their memories. The only issue with his analysis was his understanding of Lord Hades, knowing that he wouldn't allow Asna to help him like this. How did you pull it off? He asked, somewhat curious. She might be annoying, but no one insults my woman besides me. Felix didn't even listen to his question as his mind zoned out the moment he heard his insult. So, you do remember? Whoosh. Before Duke Humphrey could finish his sentence, Felix appeared right in front of his face and punched him with all of his force in the same cheek. Duke Humphrey's telekinesis barrier was thick enough to block the punch easily, however, it could do nothing at all against the destruction aura around Felix's fist. Realizing the danger he was in, Duke Humphrey got rid of his nonchalant attitude and focused completely on taking down Felix. Boom! 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 Because of Felix's destruction mist protecting him from Duke Humphrey's overpowered telekinesis control, the battle seemed to have regained some balance as they were engaged in a relentless combat dance. Their powers collided in cataclysmic clashes, each blow they exchanged sent shockwaves that rippled through the already shattered cityscape. Duke Humphrey grew impatient and decided to use his elemental abilities, finally accepting that his telekinesis powers were useless in this fight. Magma Pulse. He pulled away from Felix and clapped both of his hands on the ground below, causing burning magma and lava to erupt in hundreds of fissures, rushing in the direction of Felix. Felix hadn't expected magma to be used, so he wasn't given much time to react, forcing him to use the first defensive ability in mind. Adamantine Gates. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! 3 white crystallized thick gates erupted from the ground up in a single line and blocked the magma and lava. However, because the ground was shaken up pretty badly, the gates weren't able to stand for far too long. Thud! Thud! They soon lost their balance and fell over, but Felix was already gone. When he appeared, he was a couple of meters away from Duke Humphrey's back. This was the sign of a battle-experienced master, counter-attacking in the least expected time. Checkmate, Felix uttered icily while his pupils illuminated with a white hexagon. The instant the hexagon was created, time seemed to have come to a halt around both Felix and Duke Humphrey. The only difference was that Felix had marked time with his destruction concept aura, nullifying the time-slowing effect on his physique alone. Duke! Nolver cried out loud in fear and shock as he watched Felix manifesting a spatial blade in his hand and swinging it at the unmoving head of his master. He wanted to rush and save him, but his wiggly legs had absolutely no strength to them. When the spatial blade was about to make contact, Nolver closed his eyes in despair, not able to accept the next scene. PSSSSSSSSS. When he heard the sound of flesh ripping apart and blood spewing out, his heart sunk for a little before his rationality took over. How can I hear such sounds while he used a spatial blade? He thought in confusion while opening his eyes again. What he saw next left him utterly stunned. Instead of Duke Humphrey being decapitated as he expected, his eyes showed him his master glowing in brilliant divine light while his glowing right arm extended through Felix's chest, lifting him high above. Blood was dripping from Duke Humphrey's right hand, seemingly holding onto something red and fleshy. When Nolver squinted hard, shivers coursed through his spine after realizing that it was Felix's heart. How? Felix muttered, his eyes couldn't help but hide the shock and disbelief in them. The second chapter will be released either tonight or tomorrow. I know you cussing me over the cliffhanger. 1495 Duke Humphrey vs Felix. 2. How? I want to tell you, but your mind isn't equipped with the intelligence to understand the answer. Duke Humphrey replied nonchalantly while pulling back his arm from Felix's chest and hurling him to the side like a rag doll. Thud. Felix rolled 3 times on the floor before his back smashed against a wall. He remained leaning against it with his head lowered and blood gushing out of his gaping wound. W.A. Tur. S.E. NSE, healing, poise, on, restore it ion. Felix tried to use his available healing powers to recover from such a devastating wound, but alas, his entire heart was missing and his healing abilities weren't equipped to restore such a vital organ before he dropped dead. I can, go, out, like, this. And so, against his wishes, his resolve, and his will, Felix's eyelids dropped down until they were closed, marking the end of his chapter in the spirit realm. The moment he lost consciousness, his soul turned into a small floating flame, hovering in its place, at the mercy of anyone near it. Felix was strong, no, he was too powerful, but he wasn't in his element with all of his powers. Yet, the thing that really F***ed him over was his lack of knowledge about his enemy and his powers. Duke. I knew you would win. Nolver came running to the scene with a hearty laugh, the complete opposite of his previous despair. Not too bothered, Duke Humphrey cancelled off the divine blessing and ordered coldly, contact the commander and tell him the vermin have been taken care of, they can take control over the sky again. On it. Nolver turned to look at Felix's soul flame and asked with an icy tone, what do we do with him? Hand him over to an angel and make him erase his existence. Duke Humphrey ordered while flying away, I have already wasted enough of my divinity on trash. I have it covered. Nolver gave him a slight head nod and walked towards Felix's soul flame. He lifted him up and brought him close to his face. Oh, how I wish it was possible to hurt you now. Nolver sighed in disappointment, knowing that spirits couldn't feel anything in this form. So, he could only spit on him over the humiliation he put him through before taking off. As he was flying towards the nearest squad of angels, he met with Sharky and Grievous on the way. Nolver told them what happened and both of them couldn't help but show surprised expressions as they eyed Felix's soul flame. I can't believe he managed to force the Duke to tap in on his divinity. Grievous said, he treasured it more than anything since he can't get it restored unless he returned back to the Eternal Kingdom. He never used it before, even I completely forgot that he possessed it. Nolver remarked with an envious tone, but, it's really amazing. You should have seen it in action. Its aura alone cancelled off all activated elements of this bastard. It's expected, he is using the greatest divinity in the Eternal Kingdom, Radiant Codex Divinity, only acclaimed upper citizens of the Eternal Kingdom are worthy to be blessed by it. Grievous said with a stern tone, its bestower is the most powerful being in the entire universe and all of its realms. It's a dream come true to be receptive to his gifts. One day boys, one day, Sharky said, his eyes gleaming with desire and hope as he stared at the portal high above. In a few moments, they met up with the Angels squad and requested them to eliminate Felix's soul flame. This is the soul of the F***er who was assassinating your forces. Sharky shared with a cold tone. Say no more. This was enough to convince the angels as they dropped their duties immediately and turned to face Felix's soul flame. Seraphiel, finish him off. The squad captain ordered a beautiful green-eyed angel. Seraphiel placed her outstretched hand right on top of Felix's soul flame and began to glow with scorching divine light, a celestial fire capable of purging even the darkest of souls. Hush! Just as the divine scorching light emerged from her palm was about to land on the flame's soul, a sudden colossal water tentacle emerged from the ether. It was sinuous and serpentine, reaching out with a preternatural grace and snatching the flame soul in the blink of an eye. Hey! Seraphiel, stunned and powerless against this unforeseen intervention, could only watch in disbelief as her divine beam got wasted on a ruined building, blowing it into pieces. Abruptly, Elder Kraken's voice echoed through the heavenly plane like the rumbling of distant thunder. The fate of this soul is not yours to decide, he intoned, his words resonating with the power of the oceans. Elder Kraken. Sharky, Nolver, and Grievous all showed ugly expressions at the sight of Elder Kraken flying high above them. He was in his humanoid form, but there were 8 giant octopus water tentacles, waving around threateningly. Still, none of them seemed afraid of him. In fact, they entered battle stance with cold looks, clearly not planning to leave this place without Felix's soul. Their attitude was understandable as Elder Kraken was known to have climbed to his position through his remarkable intelligence. Since he never fought before, everyone assumed that he didn't bother to concentration on his strength like most heavenly elders. How disappointing, Grievous, you turned your back on the realm also. Elder Kraken shook his head in disapproval. I never had my back on your side in the first place. Grievous asked coldly, now, hand over the soul and we might let you go. Let me go. Elder Kraken sighed, I was never a fan of battles, but it seems I can never run away from them even in the afterlife. Stop wasting our time and do as we say. Nolver's confidence was over the roof compared to his fight against Felix. It was because of none other than the Angels squad behind him. Both of you are wasting our time. The Angels squad captain got disgruntled and ordered sternly, kill him and the spirit FLA. Web. 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 8 targets, 8 tentacles, 8 webs, 1 fate. Getting sent hurling downward, their forms reduced to a mere flesh paste upon impact. This happened in a fraction of a heartbeat. They didn't even know what happened to them or feel any pain from both attacks. They died instantly like they were mere flies getting swatted to their damnation. Ah, how terrible! Elder Kraken shook his head in disappointment before turning around and taking off toward his mansion with Felix's soul in hand. On his journey there, his water tentacles kept whipping any angel on the way to oblivion, clearing the road for him. Those tentacles seemed extremely potent compared to the ones Felix using, they were carrying like 1,000,000 tons for each hit, turning anything hit by them into powder. When he arrived at his mansion, he placed Felix's flame spirit on the table in front of him and reached out to Carbuncle. I have saved him, thanks for the tip. This is the least I can do, Carbuncle replied with a stern tone. I never thought he would actually lose against the Duke. If I knew this, I would have reached out to you much sooner to help him out. Even since the apocalypse occurred, Carbuncle kept his all-seeing eyes on Felix and other important figures in his life. He watched Felix combat the angels and absolutely decimate them even when they possessed divine energy. This made him confident that Felix would win against the Duke. Alas, that twist had left him stunned just like Felix. I am taken back as much as you. Elder Kraken nodded solemnly, our boy isn't a weakling to lose so easily, that godliness in the Duke's possession is too peculiar. Both elders were lacking in wisdom when it came to the eternal kingdom. It was understandable as the scribes had no access to any information about it. Lord Hades was also uptight about its knowledge, which meant the only way to learn about it was through the ones living there and coming out. I have listened to the 3 traders' conversation. They mentioned something about types of divinities and that the one in the Duke's possession was the highest of order, bestowed by the strongest being in the universe. Carbuncle shared. If it's him bestowing it, then I can see why the Duke was able to finish off Felix. Elder Kraken narrowed his eyes in focus, knowing that the being was one of the three rulers of the Eternal Kingdom, most importantly, one of the perpetrators accountable for incarcerating Isna. 1496 Isnalaya, the exiled celestial. This is all I know at the moment, Carbuncle said. You have already shared too much. Elder Kraken warned, I know that Lord Hades isn't focusing on his duties, but don't push it, so when he returns order again, you might keep your position at the excuse of assisting in the war. We will handle that when the time comes. Carbuncle frowned as he watched Felix from the video call. What do we do now about him? It will take a minimum of a week for his soul to recover even if he consumed all the best restoration treasures in the realm. Elder Kraken sighed, an entire week. I doubt this invasion will last half a day unless Lord Hades somehow lost. Elder Kraken might not have liked the invasion to happen, but he saw it as the perfect chance for Felix to leave the heavenly plane and return to his body without needing the Karen or anything else. He could literally escape the heavenly plane and meet up with Lord Quetzalcoatl somewhere in the spirit realm and let him handle it from there. Now that Felix was a mere soul flame, it wasn't possible without Karen's assistance. They would never break the rules like this even if their lord wasn't watching them. I guess she is his only hope at the moment, Carbuncle smiled wryly. Who's she? Who else? Are you serious? Elder Kraken raised an eyebrow in surprise. That other troublemaker is coming here. Coming. Carbuncle chuckled, she has already arrived. Asna could be seen soaring high above the capital city, her mesmerizing beauty was somehow even more divine and celestial than all the angels below combined. Where are you, Felix? Yet, her bewitching face had a deep scowl as she used her soul familiarity to sense Felix's spirit in the capital city. Amidst the chaos and devastation below, she felt a faint whisper calling for her from the northern district. The feeling flickered like a dying ember, on the very verge of extinguishing, making her realize that his soul was teetering on the precipice of oblivion. How can it be so weak? Asna's radiant eyes widened with anguish and rage as she beheld the state of Felix's soul. She knew that this state implied that Felix's spirit had lost its physical properties and could be said to have died in the spirit realm. Bastards! Bastards! Enraged beyond measure, Asna manifested two blazing wings with celestial white fire as she descended into the city. Without an ounce of hesitation, she flapped her wings once, and a tempest of celestial flames was left in her trail while she flew toward Felix. This trail of celestial white flames had annihilated any angel unfortunate enough to stand in her path. They were reduced to nothing more than twinkling fragments of stardust, their forms torn asunder by her unstoppable wrath. Yet, this wasn't the worst part. The celestial flames seemed to have a mind of its own, hunting down even the furthest angels from Asna. Commander! We are being assaulted by divine flames. Arg! We are under attack from a celestial. The angels reported the situation on their dying breaths, realizing almost instantly that the flames belonged to the Eternal Kingdom. Who is it? Commander Nottingham frowned. Did you get a good look at the target? There is no target. It's just celestial flames chasing us off. This can't be. Commander Nottingham stood up from his chair, understanding that only beings from the upper celestial echelon were able to control divine energies in such a manner. It has to be her. Duke Humphrey said coldly, Asnalaya, the exiled celestial. She is here? Why the f***ck am I knowing about this now? Does the Godfather know about this? Commander Nottingham was infuriated. No one updated him about Asna and he ought to feel enraged. His soldiers were in extreme danger as there was no way they could face off against a celestial regardless of whether she was at her weakest possible state or not. I have already told the Godfather about her and he said he has set up a plan to take care of her. Duke Humphrey replied with a cold smile, all you have to do is trust in his vision. It's not like I can do anything else. Commander Nottingham rubbed his eyelids as he returned to his seat. He understood that even if he led his army personally against Asna, they wouldn't be able to touch a single hair strand of hers. So, he could only order his armies to lay low for a while until Asna got taken care of by his godfather. Amidst the depths of Elder Kraken's mansion that stood as an imposing edifice in this unholy war, Asna, her large feathery wings aglow with celestial fire, burst through the mansion's imposing gates, a murderous glint etched in her eyes. Following her senses, she swiftly arrived at a dimly lit living room and there, upon a weathered table, she found Felix's soul flame, flickering like a fragile candle in a storm. Eyes brimming with a murderous glare, Asna turned her attention to Elder Kraken, who was sitting in front of it with a wry smile, knowing that Asna wasn't going to let him off the hook. As expected, her voice trembled with anger as she demanded, "How could you let him fall to such a state? You couldn't even protect him for a few minutes until I arrived." Before Elder Kraken could respond, Carbuncle emerged as a hologram and defended him. If it wasn't for Elder Kraken intervening to save him, Felix would have been erased from existence. The ones you should be angry at are Duke Humphrey and the invaders. Asna's fiery gaze shifted to Carbuncle, her anger momentarily quelled by confusion. "Duke Humphrey? Tell me what happened exactly." Asna also didn't believe that Felix would lose to a spirit no matter how strong he was if he went all out. But after Elder Kraken narrated everything that went down, Asna couldn't help but feel angry at no one but herself. I should have told him at least about the divine energies. If he knew about them, he wouldn't have been caught by surprise like that. Asna wanted to keep Felix in the dark about matters related to the Eternal Kingdom since she knew it would do nothing but overwhelm him and make him feel utterly hopeless. The Eternal Kingdom would even make primogenitors and elemental lords feel hopeless, don't even mention him. But her withholding key information ended up *ing off Felix big time, as he never expected there would be a divine energy capable of cancelling off even time abilities. "It's no use to blame yourself," Carbuncle said calmly. "What's important is to get Felix out of the heavenly plane as fast as possible before Lord Hades returns. We need you to hasten his soul's recovery. Can you do it?" "Leave it to me." Asna nodded. She closed her eyes off and extended her hands towards Felix's fragile soul flame. Her divine energy, shimmering and pure, emanated from her being in a shimmering aura of celestial light. With unwavering focus, Asna gently infused Felix's wavering essence with her own divine power. The soul flame responded, its feeble glow gaining strength with each passing moment. The once tattered threads of Felix's spirit wove themselves back together, knitting into a luminous and whole form once more. Asna's eyes shimmered with tears of relief as she watched Felix's soul flame begin to grow bigger and bigger until it was turned into a complete spirit again. Only then did she stop channeling her celestial energy into him. After his form became whole again, he slowly became aware of the world around him and his muddled eyes opened up to the light yet again. The instant clarity was restored, his gaze locked onto Asna's tearful face, and he saw the profound emotions etched in her expression: love, forgiveness, guilt, and unshakable devotion. Instinctively, Felix reached out with his hand, his spirit form ethereal and gentle, and tenderly wiped away a tear that traced a silvery path down Asna's shimmering cheek. It was a basic yet profound gesture, a wordless recognition of the pain he had caused and the redemption he sought. Asna's tearful eyes met Felix's, and in that moment, they conveyed more than words ever could. "I have missed you like nothing else," Felix muttered, his voice cold, distant, yet still, making Asna feel the genuine love he had for her. She leaned closer to him until their foreheads were slightly touching and replied with a soft angelic voice, "And I have ached for your presence more than my freedom." 1497 A mere shockwave. Felix cupped Asna's face in his hands, his fingers trembling with emotion. Her eyes, her lips, her face, her soul, everything seemed so radiant, like he was holding into a warm and gentle sun. The moment she smiled, its warm brilliance had dawned on his frozen heart like a sun dawning in the closest of winters. "I was foolish enough to think that separating from you would make my love fade away, if just by a little." Asna chuckled softly. "It only grew stronger and more intense, making it unbearable to watch you without yearning for your presence, your touch, and your love." With every tender word, and every loving glance from Asna, the ice that had encased his heart began to crack and splinter. Like a gentle thaw, the warmth of her affection whispered through the frozen chambers, stirring life within. The once veiled heart, now bathed in the soft light of her devotion, began to beat anew, a rhythm of love, forgiveness, and rebirth. Felix, now unburdened by the chains of his new persona, felt the rush of emotions flood his being. A faint familiar, gentle smile tugged at the corners of Felix's lips as if the very essence of his former self had awakened from a deep slumber. His eyes, once cold and grim, seemed to shimmer with a restored light, a glimmer of the kind soul that had once shone so brightly. "I love you. I love you too." These were the first words released out of Felix's mouth after his return, making Asna lean forward until their lips met in a tender, loving kiss. In that sweet moment, all the pain of the past and present faded into insignificance, replaced by the warmth and passion of their rekindled affection. "Wow, that works!" Elder Kraken muttered in surprise, realizing that Asna had helped Felix beat the memory's reformation system, which shouldn't have been possible without a set of conditions. Memories decide personality, and the only way for spirits to have their personalities changed was to go through either a trauma, have their memories replaced, or a burst of new memories added. But Felix hadn't gone through any of this. He simply felt Asna's genuine love for him, and it was enough to shatter his iced heart, awakening a similar version of his previous self. That's the power of true love. Carbuncle smiled kindly at the scene of Felix and Asna hugging each other in peaceful silence. It was a moment of profound reunion, a testament to the power of love and redemption. In that fleeting smile and the light in his eyes, an image of himself and his wife overlapped with them, making his smile turn even bigger. Suddenly, all of them were jolted after sensing an approaching powerful vibrational waves from the south. Rumble! The mansion began to shake like it was suffering under an 8-degree earthquake, causing paintings to fall off, chairs to flip, and the fish in water tanks to swim all over the place in agitation. "What's this?" Felix and Asna were forced to cut their reunion short and fly off outside of the mansion with Elder Kraken, wanting to check on the situation. The moment they exited the mansion, they were shocked to see a massive dust cloud that was touching the sky, devouring the entire surface of the heavenly plane. It was like an apocalyptic scene from a movie after a meteor landed. "Is this the doing of the Eternal Kingdom?" Felix asked, his voice as cold as ever. His emotions might have been awakened by Asna, but it didn't mean that he became kind and soft or such. "No." Asna shook her head, her eyes locked on all the fleeting angels, who were trying to find cover from the approaching storm. "Then what?" "This is a shockwave." Elder Kraken gulped with a solemn expression before continuing. "A shockwave resulted from Lord Hades and Hephaestus' battle." Felix felt chills course on his spine at the sound of that. He understood that their battle must be happening extremely far away, yet, just a simple shockwave from it was enough to raise the entire heavenly plane. When Felix saw the direction it was coming from, he instantly broke off his daze and uttered, "Be right back." Then, he teleported back to where he left Kara, Sekiro, Miss Sani, and her servant. Hudush! Hudush! The moment he reappeared, he was assaulted by a vortex of radiant and chaotic forces locked in a tumultuous dance. Felix protected himself with crystallized armor and pushed through the ravaging storm, looking here and there until finally locating his closed ones tucked together inside a telekinesis barrier powered by Sekiro. He was seen standing with great difficulty as he affixed his sword on the ground, holding it tightly while shielding Kara, Miss Sani, and little Timmy behind him. Miss Sani was also offering her help by enhancing the telekinesis barrier, but it was clear that the storm was simply way too powerful for them. Just as it started to crack and about to collapse on itself, Felix appeared amidst them to their shock, and teleported them back to Elder Kraken's mansion. That was a close one. Felix sighed in relief as he gazed at Miss Sani and his servant's taken-back looks. "Master!" Kara was the first to rush to his side and hug his legs while shivering, resembling a frightened baby deer. "That took the wind out of me, thanks." Meanwhile, Sekiro fell on his butt with sweat covering his entire forehead and chest, heaving up and down in exhaustion. As expected, my darling will never let me turn into a wisp. Miss Sani grinned playfully as she locked her arms with Felix. Felix, Carbuncle, and Elder Kraken all proceeded silent simultaneously and turned in Asna's direction, each showing a different expression. While she had a faint smile on her gorgeous face, it did nothing to cover for the glint of craziness in her eyes. So, you had this kind of relationship with her, huh? I left you for a year to your own devices and your D***ck has already taken charge? Is that it? Asna spoke with a soft angelic voice, but in Felix's ears, it seemed even more terrifying than the chaotic storm on the outside. What relationship? This lunatic always likes to joke around. Faster than the speed of light, Felix slipped out of Miss Sani's hands and appeared next to Asna, locking his hand with hers to appease her a little. Tell her. Felix glared at Miss Sani, for your own sake, you better agree with me and don't joke around. Felix always knew that Asna was a bit crazy possessive when it arrived to other girls being close to him. But, since she didn't have any powers and was linked with his soul, selfie and other threats were left at peace. But now that she had her own soul and her powers somewhat restored, angering her or touching her craziness was the same as poking a god. Haha, I didn't expect you to have such a breathtaking girlfriend. You sure get more and more mysterious by the second. Miss Sani chuckled to ease the atmosphere after her danger senses tingled like crazy the moment her eyes locked in with Asna's whirlpools. When she noticed that Asna hadn't reacted to her compliment and was still giving her the same sinister smiley face, she understood that this wouldn't end unless she explained herself and apologized. And so, she did. I am sorry for creating any confusion or trouble, I was just teasing him. Immediately after, Asna's aura returned to peaceful again, showing Miss Sani her good side. I see, it's okay, as long as nothing happened. Right. She said while giving Felix a side glance. Right, right. Felix concurred immediately, relieved that the crisis had been diverted. Asna was easily jealous when it arrived to him and he loved that about her even though it could be a bit much sometimes. The situation on the outside isn't too good. Elder Kraken suddenly interjected, the shockwave has brought the entire city to ruination and it is heading up north to other cities. Most spirits must have turned into wisps if they had nothing or no one to cover them. Felix frowned, the angels shouldn't be too affected by this, which means after the storm eases a little, they will start executing those defenseless wisps. We can't let that happen. Asna uttered coldly, each erased soul in the realm will make it worse for Lord Hades. He is already weakened immensely due to the universe's punishment. Even while weakened, I can't see him losing in his own realm. Felix inquired with a confused tone, am I wrong? You have no idea. Asna grinned wryly as she stared at the ceiling, but her pupils reflected the spinning portal high above. The second chapter will be released tonight. 1498 Lord Hades vs Godfather Hephaestus. 10 minutes ago, right at the start of the invasion. Whoosh whoosh. Lord Hades and Godfather Hephaestus manifested away from each other in the desolate heart of the spirit realm, where ethereal mists swirled and the boundaries of reality blurred. Hades, cloaked in shadows that danced like sentient tendrils, exuded an aura of austere authority. His piercing gaze, like the abyss itself, bore the weight of tens of billions of years spent as the guardian of the underworld. His presence was an embodiment of the enigmatic laws that governed the souls and spirits of the departed. On the other hand, Godfather Hephaestus radiated an incandescent heat that defied the ethereal chill of the spirit realm. Their eyes, two opposing cosmic forces, met in the middle of nowhere. A void that seemed to stretch beyond the realms of existence. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, and the ethereal mists churned as if bearing witness to an epical confrontation. The only spectators to this holy cosmic standoff were the mindless wandering spirits, moving around the spirit realm with no thought in mind, no emotion in heart. Hades, you have grown soft. Godfather Hephaestus criticized, moving us away from your precious little toy to not damage it. Here I thought you created that plane and gave spirits a new life out of boredom, you actually care about them." Lord Hades remained silent, neither agreeing nor opposing his claim. This irritated Godfather Hephaestus even more. "You called us sellouts for uniting under the three rulers and abiding by their systemic hierarchy, but aren't you doing the same?" Godfather Hephaestus sneered, "The only difference is that you put yourself in a leadership position and lord it upon those poor spirits, who can't object to you at all. Just be honest and accept the fact that you wouldn't have made it far in our hierarchy, which made it impossible for your ego to accept." Godfather Hephaestus scoffed, "As for being loyal to the non-existent master? It's a mere excuse to hide your true cowardly nature." "Are you done?" Lord Hades remarked calmly. "No answer again? I guess I hit the nail right on the head. The only thing you will be hitting today is yourself for daring to transgress on my realm." The moment Lord Hades finished speaking, with a malevolent glint in his eyes, he extended his shadowy hand toward Godfather Hephaestus, seeking to invoke the power of spiritual possession. Hades aimed to infiltrate and control the fiery essence of Hephaestus's soul, dragging it under his own control. In this spirit realm, it didn't matter what spirit it was, Lord Hades had absolute control over them. But as his shadowy tendrils reached out to ensnare Hephaestus's spirit, they encountered an unexpected resistance. A brilliant and resplendent barrier formed of three divine lights. "Hey, you think so lowly of me to believe I haven't come prepared against this?" Godfather Hephaestus smirked, "The only reason I dared to come down here is through the blessings of the three rulers." The first was a radiant, golden light. It shimmered with the immutable power of divine order, pushing back Hades's dark tendrils with a steadfast resolve. The second was a pure, white light. It radiated a transcendent brilliance that repelled the encroaching shadows, cleansing the space around Hephaestus's soul. The third was an intense, golden light, a manifestation of unbridled cosmic energy. It blazed with the ferocity of celestial flames, creating a searing barrier that scorched away his ethereal tendrils, leaving no room for Hades to penetrate. As the three divine lights merged and intertwined, they formed an impenetrable fortress around Hephaestus's spirit, protecting it from the malevolent grasp of Lord Hades. Lord Hades furrowed his eyebrows in disgruntlement and revoked off his attempt to possess Hephaestus' soul. "Ha ha ha! If you were at your strongest, even the three rulers themselves wouldn't want to antagonize you in your territory." Godfather Hephaestus laughed mockingly, "But now? Just their divinities are enough to cancel off your spiritual control over your own realm." Lord Hades might have remained silent again, but he knew that Godfather Hephaestus was right in his assumption. His strength was barely 10% of its original, as the universe had sealed a significant chunk of his powers and put him under constant agonizing pain. This meant he wasn't just fighting Godfather Hephaestus, but the universe, and even the three rulers' support. "My turn." Godfather Hephaestus decided to unleash his full powers, realizing that his three divinities barrier wasn't a permanent one. The moment its celestial energy gets exhausted, he would be played like a fiddle through his own soul. With a resolute focus, Godfather Hephaestus's colossal form began to swell with might, expanding exponentially until he surpassed the very scale of the stars themselves. His fiery aura blazed with an intensity that outshone the cosmos, casting a radiant glow that painted the expanse of the spirit realm in brilliant hues. Behind him, as if conjured from the fiery heart of a supernova, 10 celestial stars took form. Each one radiated a unique and vivid color as if they were the very embodiment of fire. If Felix and even primogenitors were to see him, their realizing of strength would be flipped upside down. It was understandable, as Godfather Hephaestus didn't just create new stars, but real new ones, which could last for billions of years on their own until they collapse on themselves. This was the terrifying difference between laws and elements. "Begone!" With a magnificent flourish, Godfather Hephaestus hurled them into the cosmic abyss, their radiant trails of light leaving streaks of color across the spirit realm. The stars streaked toward Lord Hades, blazing with an otherworldly brilliance. In response to the celestial onslaught, Lord Hades was forced to match Hephaestus's titanic scale. His form expanded in kind, growing to meet the colossal challenge posed by the fiery deity. Lord Hades's shadowy presence loomed larger than the boundaries of the known universe, his power reaching its zenith in a bid to counter Hephaestus's assault. As the 10 colored stars closed in on Lord Hades's immense form, he didn't seem worried or bothered. He merely extended a finger and directed it at each incoming star. With a mere thought, Lord Hades invoked the laws that governed all spirits under his dominion and chose 10 random wandering spirits across the entire realm. In an instant, these spirits were teleported from their distant abodes to the battlefield while the celestial stars themselves disappeared in the blink of an eye like they were a mere mirage. You should try better than that if you want to take me down. Lord Hades remarked calmly, I might be weakened, but I am still in my home ground. Tisk, how annoying. Irked, Godfather Hephaestus clicked his tongue. This was a stark reminder that Lord Hades's dominion over the spirit realm was absolute, an authority that allowed him to shamble the spirits' locations with the stars. What's next? Lord Hades showed a faint cold smile as he eyed the waning brilliance of the divine shield. You are on the clock. Same as you. Godfather Hephaestus sneered, knowing that the longer the battle lasted, the more his armies erased the spirits, which would help him gain a much-needed advantage. As expected, when Lord Hades shifted his vision to the heavenly plane and saw the ongoing massacre, his expression couldn't help but turn colder. You should concentrate here. Godfather Hephaestus uttered as he gave birth to more than 100 stars, each a brilliant and radiant sphere of celestial fire. They orbited around him in a mesmerizing and chaotic dance, creating a celestial halo that blazed with a spectrum of colors. The sheer number and intensity of the revolving stars lent Hephaestus an aura of unparalleled menace, making Lord Hades understand that he wouldn't let him a moment to concentrate on anything else but him. 1499 Lord Hades vs Godfather Hephaestus. 2. Without an ounce of hesitation, Godfather Hephaestus hurled this luminous arsenal toward Lord Hades, their trajectory a blazing path of impending destruction. The stars hurtled through the spirit realm, trailing incandescent tails of cosmic energy as they closed in on their target. Ignite! Before they could cross half the distance, Godfather Hephaestus snapped his finger, causing the array of stars to erupt one after the other into brilliant supernovas, each explosion a cataclysmic burst of energy and light. The spirit realm itself quivered with the force of these celestial detonations, and the shockwaves reverberated through the cosmos. You either block and contain the force to minimize it or leave it to hit the heavenly plane. Godfather Hephaestus laughed coldly. Lord Hades, facing the impending onslaught, knew that it would be easier to turn into his spectral form and avoid the explosion entirely. However, Godfather Hephaestus was right. If he did this, the heavenly realm would be erased from the ground up and all the souls on it would be turned into wisps and thrown all over the spirit realm. He had no plans of letting it happen under his watch. With a focused and calculated motion, he summoned his mastery over the spirits and conjured a spiritual barrier of profound strength. The barrier manifested as a shimmering, ethereal shield, resonating with the essence of the spirit realm, and it manifested millions of kilometers around their battlefield. As the supernovas collided with the barrier, they unleashed their formidable force, attempting to break it apart. But, the barrier absorbed the explosive shockwaves and cosmic energies, quelling most of their fury and preventing them from wreaking havoc in the spirit realm. Still, a bit of the shockwave managed to pass through the spiritual barrier and continue on its path. Lord Hades narrowed his eyes dangerously as he glanced behind him and saw the fast-traveling shockwave in the direction of the heavenly plane. Just as he wanted to use his spiritual control to switch the heavenly plane's location entirely to a faraway area, Godfather Hephaestus appeared in front of him and thrust his massive fists forward, each encased in molten star cores. Didn't I tell you, eyes here? As they rocketed toward Lord Hades, the very essence of the stars fueled his attacks, making them a devastating force to be reckoned with. Lord Hades ditched his plans to save the heavenly plane and switched to his ethereal form, seemingly weaving through the fabric of reality. His ethereal nature allowed him to effortlessly slip between the fiery punches as if he were a wisp of smoke evading the tongues of a raging inferno. Godfather Hephaestus's molten fists collided with the fabric of the spirit realm itself, sending celestial sparks and cosmic shockwaves rippling through the cosmos. Lord Hades weaved, dipped, and twisted with supernatural grace, his form shifting and reforming in response to each attack. Their battle was a mesmerizing dance of raw power and ethereal agility. Godfather Hephaestus's punches, though mighty, found themselves striking empty space as Lord Hades effortlessly navigated between the blazing star cores. In turn, Lord Hades launched ethereal counterattacks, weaving through the fiery maelstrom to deliver precise and calculated strikes. Unfortunately, the divine shield blocked them all. The spirit realm trembled under the intensity of their close-quarters combat, a cosmic spectacle that defied the laws of both the mortal and celestial realms. It even seemed like such a combat would end with no winner as both unigens possessed way too many protective measures, making it impossible to fall under the hands of anyone. Seconds went by and then minutes. Before long, both Lord Hades and Godfather Hephaestus separated from each other and glanced in a single direction. Their celestial pupils reflected the uncanny scene of the supernova's shockwave finally reaching the heavenly plane. The plane will stand, but 80% of the spirits will be under its mercy. Lord Hades calculated the shockwave's destructiveness the instant it touched the edge of the heavenly plane, causing black lines to emerge on his forehead. He also understood that his people would be harvested left and right by the angelic armies. If a much higher percentage of death was reached, the universe would switch the punishment to a forced slumber. This was exactly what Godfather Hephaestus wanted all along, as he knew that it was impossible for him to slay Lord Hades. All he was doing was hold him up and leave the rest to Duke Humphrey and his armies. I can't return to the heavenly plane and protect it. Hephaestus can create many new portals to the eternal kingdom now that the seal has been weakened. He will order his armies to hunt down the wandering spirits, which will lead to the same result. Lord Hades thought of a way to solve this on his own, but no matter which scheme he came up with, he realized that Godfather Hephaestus had a way to stop it. For example, he couldn't even switch Godfather Hephaestus' location with another spirit due to the divine shield cancelling his spiritual abilities. Haha. That's a nice expression you got there. It sure suits you. Godfather Hephaestus laughed in mockery as he launched another attack. He knew that Lord Hades realized he was out of options and nothing he do would change the end result, which was being forced into a deep long slumber. Even though Godfather Hephaestus was literally screwing with the universal's order by fighting against Lord Hades, the universe would not punish him unless he actively erased a soul's existence. That's why Godfather Hephaestus was using celestial angelic armies instead of his own true followers in the eternal kingdom to avoid punishment. Everything was already planned and calculated to the last second. Still, Lord Hades' frown was turned into a faint cold smile as he blocked Godfather Hephaestus' attacks. What are you smiling for? Godfather Hephaestus knitted his eyebrows in displeasure. I am not the sole foe of the eternal kingdom around here. Lord Hades' eyes reflected the sight of Asna, Felix, Elder Kraken, other spiritual elders, and the law enforcers, standing in the way of Duke Humphrey, Commander Nottingham, and his angelic armies. While he couldn't do anything about the armies, the same could be said about Asna and the others. Don't tell me you are relying on Asnalaya. Ha ha ha. Godfather Hephaestus roared in laughter like he heard the best joke in his life. Before Lord Hades could respond, Godfather Hephaestus cut his chuckle short and proclaimed with a sinister grin, I doubt she can even defend herself from what's about to come next. Don't tell me. Lord Hades' expression turned cold. He, why do you think they have invested so much in my plan? Godfather Hephaestus chuckled, let's see if you are lucky enough to be awake and spectate the show. Before Lord Hades could react, Godfather Hephaestus created more than 1,000 stars this time and brought them all close to each other, making them resemble a sphere of fish roe. Then, he uttered coldly, collapse. Responding to his call, the stars collapsed upon themselves, compressing their luminous cores into an infinitesimal point in space. The result was nothing short of cataclysmic. A black hole, a voracious singularity of unfathomable gravity, materialized in the midst of the spirit realm. The event horizon of the black hole radiated with an eerie and ominous darkness as if it hungered for everything in its vicinity. While Saurus, the gravity primogenitor, could manifest a black hole out of his elemental energy, what Godfather Hephaestus did was follow the lawful way to manifest one. Black holes were formed when massive stars exhaust their nuclear fuel and undergo gravitational collapse, and Godfather Hephaestus merely accelerated this process. The gravitational pull exerted by this newfound cosmic entity was beyond comprehension. It threatened to consume all in its path, warping the very fabric of space and time. If this wasn't the spirit realm and almost all matter nearby was spectral, they would have drawn into its maw, spiraling inexorably toward the point of no return. Even though it was supermassive, Lord Hades and Godfather Hephaestus were still so much bigger than it, allowing them to resist its gravitational pull quite easily. Still, Lord Hades wasn't too joyful about this, as he understood that Godfather Hephaestus created this black hole not to onslaught him, but to attack the heavenly plane. Since gravity traveled at the same speed as light, he knew that it would take almost no time before everyone on the heavenly plane with a physical form to feel the change. Unbeknownst to any of this, the heavenly plane's residents were still suffering from the shockwave's destruction. Its speed and strength were reduced with the distance it traveled, but still, even the cities at the northmost part of the plane ended up falling apart. Fortunately, the news reached them much quicker than the shockwave, which helped many cities to keep their citizens alive by simply turning to their spiritual forms until the storm went away. Too bad for those in the capital, the shockwave came way too fast and most of them were already hiding under the rubble, causing them to get hit by it before they could turn their spectral forms. Honestly, it wouldn't have mattered much, as even those fast enough to make such a decision ended up getting hunted by the angels mid-storm through their divine abilities. Right now, the capital city has turned into absolute ruins without a single skyscraper above ground. Most of the alive spirits and wisps were hiding deep under the rubble, not daring to get out even if they had a clear path. The only ones bold enough to face the thousands upon thousands of angels' army were what was left of the government. Right now, they were in a standoff against them high above in the capital's sky. Asna, I think it's time to fill me in on the eternal kingdom and those so-called divinities. Felix uttered coldly as his eyes were affixed on Duke Humphrey. I have no plans to lose to him ever again. The second chapter will be released later at night. 1500 The Four Divinities. I agree, but first, let's do this so we can talk in peace. Asna smiled at Felix for a moment. Then, with the snap of her fingers, time itself came to a screeching halt. In an instant, the capital city froze in motion. Angelic warriors, with their glistening armor and radiant wings, stood motionless mid-flight. Duke Humphrey, his regal form suspended in the air, was caught in the midst of a powerful incantation, his eyes wide with surprise. The heavenly plains stretched out in eerie silence as if the very fabric of reality had been paused. Only Asna, Felix, and Elder Kraken remained unaffected by the temporal stasis. Both Felix and Elder Kraken were left staring at the entire frozen capital with the thousands of unmoving angels with widened eyes, incapable of believing the sight before them. You can do this. Felix stuttered as he looked back at Asna. Hehe, now that my soul is free and the eternal kingdom portal is open, I can do more than this. Asna chuckled with a look of pride etched on her face. What do you think? You were always making fun of me for being useless. This is a mere small taste of my powers. Who would have thought, you weren't so useless after all? Felix murmured as he kept looking around him. I know you are just jealous and teasing me. Asna didn't take the bait and got provoked. Honestly, for someone to have the title Origin of Laws, I expected much more than this. Elder Kraken rubbed his chin as he asked, can't you freeze the time in the entire heavenly plane? Or erase those flying insects with a wave of a hand? I can do much more than that, but I need celestial energy. Asna sighed, I am still too weak and too young, I still haven't even gotten my true awakening. So, I have to depend on celestial energy to empower such powerful abilities, and at this moment only a little of it is slipping from the Eternal Kingdom's portal. Wait, don't Unigens not need energy? Felix frowned. Who told you that? Asna rolled her eyes at him. In this universe, nothing can be created without an equal amount of energy being lost. Nimmo has been devouring void energy ever since he was born. He might be eating it for growth, but most of it is used to fuel the creation of his law-based abilities. Asna clarified, the only difference is that law-based abilities remain permanently unless they were cancelled by the creator, while elemental abilities require a constant amount of energy to maintain them. So, that's how it worked. I always found it weird that Unigens can create stuff out of nowhere without trading off anything. Felix nodded in understanding. It seemed too illogical. Unigens might be considered masters of the laws, but even they were under this constraint imposed by the universe. If it wasn't for this, neutral and elemental energy would be absolutely useless if it was used only to create fake and temporary abilities when it was considered a massive part of the universe's ecosystem. Wait, does this mean this city can remain frozen in time forever? Felix asked with a surprised tone. Yes, unless I cancelled it or someone intervened and broke it apart like the space/time Unigen. Asna nodded. Monsters, you guys really are a different breed. Felix began to understand slowly why Asna never wanted to tell him about the Eternal Kingdom and the monsters in it. The ability to mess up with the universe's laws in real time and permanently was simply too godlike. He was not ready in the slightest to deal with them. It's not the proper time to give you all the details about the Eternal Kingdom. But, you should know more about the divinities, celestial energy, and the three rulers at least. I am all ears, Felix said with a stern tone. Even Elder Kraken's ears perked up in curiosity. There are 4 types of divinities, and they are called brilliant runic divinity, resplendent divinity, incandescent divinity, and lastly, radiant codex divinity. All of them have a single main source, and its celestial energy. If you want to understand divinities, you must learn about it first. Asna explained, celestial energy is a special type of energy that exists only in the Eternal Kingdom. It's extremely potent, and 1 drop of it could be compared to 100 drops of the purest type of elemental energy. That powerful? Felix's eyelids raised in surprise. It is the current known most powerful and potent source of energy across the entire universe, and nothing can come on par with it. Asna dropped a bombshell. The best part? It can be used to fuel all elemental/law abilities, devices, items, potions, and whatnot. This had indeed startled Felix, as he didn't expect such a potent type of energy to be neutral and accepting of all possible sources. Isn't it a bit too overpowered? Felix frowned as he eyed the frozen angelic armies. How can we deal with the Eternal Kingdom when they can cast 100 times more powerful abilities than us? Energy was a massive issue in battles, and even primogenitors struggled immensely with it. Imagine Thor or Jormungandr traveling the universe in their astronomical sizes and with celestial energy as their fuel. They wouldn't need to devour planets and such to consume neutral energy and turn it into their own elemental energy so often. In addition, this kind of energy would allow them to cast many powerful abilities with very little power source to go with it. You don't have to worry about that. Not everyone in the Eternal Kingdom is able to use the celestial energy, only those blessed by the 3 rulers or a celestial of their rank can use it. Asna clarified, even then, those people are special and rare, since celestial energy is extremely limited in quantity and the 3 rulers make sure to not bless unworthy ones. Wait, if that's so, how are there this many angels using divine energies? Isn't their source celestial energy? Felix was confused. They are using incandescent divinity. It's a standardized type of divinity, which has the least amount of celestial energy in it. It can only scorch and destroy, unlike the other 3 which each has a special effect. Since the requirement to be blessed by a portion of it is minimal, it's obtainable by the majority of the Eternal Kingdom's citizens. I see. Felix nodded in understanding. How about the other 3? The Duke must have been using a special kind. When he activated it and was surrounded by that intense golden light, I felt like I was nothing but a helpless mortal before the might of the entire universe. Felix said with a solemn tone. He had fought against other angels before, and even though they were using a divinity, it was nowhere near what he felt before the Duke. I heard that he cancelled all of your elemental abilities. Asna answered with an icy tone, it must be Radiant Codex Divinity. It's the highest and most powerful divinity in the universe. It held more than 80% of celestial power in it compared to incandescent divinity, which has less than 0.1%. It's also capable of great destruction, but its greatest point is the ability to cancel off both targeted elemental and law skills in its vicinity. Elemental and even law abilities. Felix's eyes widened in shock, not expecting such a daunting effect. Luckily, it's created by the strongest being in the universe, so, it's not bestowed upon any arbitrary person, and it's incredibly rare to find someone possessing a portion of it. Asna shared as she eyed Duke Humphrey, that wrinkly geezer's identity must be quite respectable up there.